ICQPodcast episode 461, Ham Radio Friedrichshafen 2025 Part 2. Well, hello fellow amateur radio enthusiasts and welcome to the 461st episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast, supported in this episode by Charles Carter and a monthly name subscription donors. In this episode, we're joined by Martin M1MRB, Chris Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin Mike 0 Sierra Golf Lima, Frank Kilo 4 Foxtrot Mike Hotel, Bill Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, and Leslie Golf 0 Charlie India Bravo to discuss the latest amateur ham radio news. Myself, Colin M6BRY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is the second half of the Ham Radio Friedrichshafen interviews that we started last episode. Well, as always, it's your very kind donations that keep the ICQ podcast advert free, and along with our monthly subscription donors, we'd like to thank Charles Carter, who took the opportunity of sending in a birthday donation as we celebrated our 17th birthday and start our 18th year of podcasting to you in the amateur radio hobby. What we'd ask you to do is do what Charles and the monthly subscription donors done, and they find value in what we do, like the fact we're advert free, and we'd like you to go along to icqpodcast.com/donate, where you can turn that value you receive from the show into a monetary figure and send it our way. All the money you send to us pays our bills and keeps your adverts free show produced for you at least every fortnight going forward. Right, now we're going to continue on with today's show. We're going to join Martin, Chris, Martin, Frank, Bill and Leslie to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur ham radio news, including decoded satellite data avoids Department of Defense deletion and M17 mode support dropped from MMDVM project. As always, hope you enjoy.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to this episode's ICQ podcast, episode 461. And tonight's news roundtable for that episode. Tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Martin. Hi, guys. Hope we're all doing really well.
I hope so. And it's been not funny weather over here at the moment, but I think we're doing well. Also in the UK, I have Mr. Mike Rothwell, M0SGL, who's probably going to try and rag me a few times tonight.
No more than usual. But you say funny weather. But, you know, we're all of the age now that you just look out when it's absolutely peeing down with rain outside and you just take a deep breath and go, oh, well, it's good for the garden. So, yeah, it's all good. Hello, how you doing?
Yeah, hello, and you're right, we do that. Oh, it's good for the garden routine. Quickly hopping over the pond, we have Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH. Hi, Frank.
Hey, Martin. Hey, everybody. On the weather report here, our heat index, at least north of me, is 115. Don't go out after 10 in the morning until 8 in the evening. So we've got hot weather, but unfortunately, it's not funny here. It's every summer.
Yeah, now that's Fahrenheit, fortunately, because if it was centigrade, it'd be boiling water. Hi. But yeah, hot enough, Frank, certainly is. Also, your side of the pond, we have Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B. Hi, Bill.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Are we supposed to give a weather report, or is that just a gag? I'm not sure what's going on there.
Well, you did a very good impersonation, but Leslie's back by popular demand. And Leslie, G0CIB. Hi, Leslie.
Good evening, Martin. Good to be on again.
Yeah, good to have you as always. Now, hopefully, we've got some interesting news stories for you, and I'm not going to sort of hammer it too hard, but they're a bit different this time, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, hams have decoded the SSMIS satellite data, which has been removed by the DOD and the NOAA. So, Bill, I think you might have a little bit of knowledge on this one. I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, in the past, they've taken the satellite data and posted it publicly on the internet, and folks were able to just go download that data set and work with it. They decided not to put that out on the internet anymore, so some folks wrote a GitHub project called SatDump, and you just put it together and have it, listen with your SDR and catch the satellite as it's downloading and process the data from there. So it's a nice little open source project. Not all SDRs work, but, RTL, SDR, AirSpy, AirSpy HF, Lime SDR, Hack RF. That's a pretty wide group of SDRs it works with. So if you have various computers around, they have it for all three platforms that people are used to. You got some antennas up for receiving, might be a little bit fun to, as I used to say on the NOAA weather radio download, it would be checking the weather traffic coming on as the satellites are downloading. Yeah,
sounds interesting, Bill. Now, Frank, let's say, more your side of the pond, but what do you think about this?
Well, it is a ham story in the following sense, as Bill kind of gave a good technical overview for the special sensor microwave imager sounder. Boy, that sounds like a good scientific project, doesn't it? Those data being cut off, gosh, why on earth do that? It's not a cost thing, but besides that, this is a good kind of white hat hacker type of thing. Hams get into this partly for MCOM. Now, a lot of MCOM folks don't necessarily do this kind of coding. Some do, some don't. But having this through a nicely done set of software and a GitHub repository for downloading that and being able to capture the data, this is the kind of community grassroots effort that hams are known for, to collect data that we suddenly can't get elsewhere. And gosh, it's one thing to want to measure the depth of ice. Yeah, not all of us are all that into that. Some might. But boy, hurricanes and where they are right at the beginning of the hurricane season, that's pretty critical, Martin.
Well, yeah, you're right on that. So knowing what's going on certainly will help, as you say, certainly will help if you can get that data. Now, Martin, I've got a feeling that you've done some looking at the satellite data and things like that. Would you be downloading this software and giving it a try?
You know what? I might give it a try. My time and playing with radio at the moment is somewhat limited, but if you only need an SDR, I have various RTL SDRs. I have, what's the one with SDR Play devices and stuff. So I've got things to do this. If I've got the right kind of antenna, I might give it a go. Yes, I have downloaded stuff from the satellites just to see what comes down and stuff like that. So it's interesting. So maybe for us, it's an interesting, fun little project, but lots of potential use for those in areas of the globe where they have more extreme weather conditions.
Yeah, it certainly is. And we certainly don't get as many, but we have had tornadoes and bits and pieces go through London even. So, yeah, it might be worth a look. Chris, have you ever thought about looking at the satellite data?
Not these satellites. I remember, Martin, many years ago, there was the FunCube dongle and the FunCube satellite that was up there. That wasn't a weather radar. That was just a satellite that we could use. And I think it was a kind of educational project. The idea was you bought this little USB dongle and you plug it into your computer in an aerial, and you could essentially use the software that they supplied to download telemetry data from this device. And I think at night time it became a repeater or something. I did some other amateur radio purpose, so it's kind of dual purpose. But I do remember running that, and I think you did the same thing, Martin. It was quite fun. I don't know if that's still going on at actually FunCube. It was one of these little CubeSats, but that was quite interesting to do. On the weather data fronts, I do remember SDR Play. There was a project that somebody, in fact, did a little Google on this. There's a document that SDR Play have on the website which talks about WEFAX, or WEFAX, and that's about downloading weather satellite data, pictures basically of the weather from satellites, which looks quite interesting. So kind of similar thing, different satellites I expect, but it's using this Black Cat HF WeatherFax software, which looks quite interesting. So you can download pictures from satellites of weather information. So I guess all that's useful to people, especially if you lose, if you're kind of off grid, so to speak, and you haven't got any way of getting useful information through. Having able to download for yourself those sorts of images could be useful, like you say, perhaps in some kind of emergency type scenario.
Yeah, certainly is, and I believe the FunCube dongles are still up there and working.
FunCube's still active, like today.
Yeah,
impressive, because I was looking here and it looks like the website for FunCube dongle has been around since sort of 2010, so that's 15 years. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, I've got a couple of FunCube dongles, and they don't get used as often as they ought, put it that way. But when they do, it's always fun. Leslie, have we left you anything to say on this? Because I know you're predominantly an HF man.
I am a HF person. I used to do satellites many, many, many years ago when I lived at another location, but that was a long time ago. I did have a bit of a grin at this story because this is what radio amateurs and hackers do. Somebody says, no, we're not doing that anymore. The door's closed. And then very shortly, no, well, actually, it's open because we can see the stuff. Most radio is unsecure. If it's going over the airwaves, there are exceptions, but if it's unsecure, somebody's going to get the key to the door and open the door, and that's exactly what AMS. So, like I said, I did have a chuckle when I heard this story. Over to you.
Yeah. Well, let's say it's an interesting story. It could be worth a look. It's something else to play with in our hobby, and
as we do.
We do, yeah, and it keeps the hobby interesting and alive. Okay, move to our next news story, and this is more an announcement, but the announcement around it could affect some of us, and that is MMDVM project drops support for M17. Now, M17 is a digital mode, very similar to DMR and Fusion and D-Star, that can be used through most hotspots that use MMDVM modules. So if you're on M17, you may not have any connection any longer. Chris, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, this one's, well, I'm not sure we've got the full story, or perhaps we'll just know what's happening behind the scenes, but Jonathan Naylor, who is the author, essentially, of MMDVM, the software G4KLX, there is a groups.io forum, and he issued a statement on there a little while ago saying, essentially, in fact, the date was the 12th of July. It's quite a long statement, but essentially, I'll read out the first part of it. He says, it is with regret and a certain amount of relief that I have removed M17 from the MMDVM project. I have two sets of issues with M17, administrative and technical. It's quite a long statement, I won't go through the rest of it, but essentially he's got a whole series of concerns about the way that M17 has been developed and run, essentially, and for that reason he has removed it from the project, which is right to do, I suppose. So there was also a response from the M17 Foundation, who go through and sort of, I guess, counter or try to answer some of his points, I suppose. So it's quite a lot of reading to do that. You can Google it. You can find the statements there from Jonathan in the groups.io group for MMDVM. Sorry, it's actually the OpenDV group, and you'll also find you'll also find the response as well if you Google that from there's from the M17 Foundation. So it's a bit of a falling out, unfortunately, and it's resulted in withdrawal of support for it from that project. So I don't quite know what the impact of this is on M17, whether it means it will be able to continue, because I imagine that its support, MMDVM, is used by an awful lot of hotspots, and without that support, I suspect that M17 may not be really very usable. So I don't know what the impact will be, but obviously there's been a bit of a falling out. Hopefully they can resolve their differences and work together again. But that's where things are at the moment.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a worry because the ICQPodcast talk group is, I believe, connected to M17. I've not been able to try it for a while, but I believe it is still connected at the moment. But if you can't connect in with an MMDVM board anymore, then that will become problematic. I'm assuming as time goes on and as upgrades happen, it'll stop working. And you can't not upgrade because, obviously there's security issues and one thing or another if you don't upgrade your devices. Martin, you spend a reasonable amount of time on a digital voice like I do. What do you think?
Well, I'll be honest, I've never used M17. I've heard of it, but there are too many other digital modes to play with. So I don't personally see it as a big loss. M17 to me, this is the similar story of like the V2000 videotape. It came third in a 2-horse race behind VHS and Betamax. But from what I understand from sort of like reading between the lines and things about M17 as a whole, it had a lot of potential and had a lot going for it. But, I can't comment enough about what it can, what it can't do, and whether it will be a big loss or not from being removed from MMDVM. I do personally wish that people would stop reinventing the wheel. There are plenty of digital modes there: DMR, D-Star, Fusion, P25, NXDN. Then you've got the proprietary ones that the manufacturers throw out with their own radios as well. Why do we need more? Either pick one and run with it, or get all the manufacturers together and take the best bits from each mode. Now, that might be what M17 was intending to, I don't know. But I'd love to see them do that and then just build one really, really good, really, really easy to use digital plugin or digital, what would you call it, codec, I guess, for people to use and play with. I don't know. Yes, a lot of people rely on MMDVM. We've got the talk group that runs. Is pretty reliant on MMDVM. The hotspots and stuff we all use. I've got multiple hotspots here. All of them have MMDVM boards in them. But at the end of the day, in case of this, it's his software. He has the right to remove support for things for whatever reason, be they technical, political, or whatever else. He has the absolute right to do that. And so clearly he's done that, and that's entirely up to him.
Yeah, as you say, Martin, that Jonathan Naylor has the right because it's his software. Now, I'm going to quickly go to Leslie. You don't tend to do these digital voice stuff, do you? But it is a bit of a shame we're losing potentially one mode that's probably taken too long to come to fruition.
You're right, Martin. I don't get involved in digital side of things. It's just one of those things. I may do in the future. Who knows? But I did read the document, and I understand there's a rebuttal. It's a dispute. Yes, there's human administrative issues, and there's also technical issues. I'm convinced that if they can sort out the human issues, the technical issues will fall into place. If they can't fix the human issues, then it's a bit like trying to fix broken eggshells. I hope they can sort it out for the benefit of the hobby. And I'm not saying who's right, who's wrong. I'm not saying that at all. But, you guys, come on, let's try and sort this out. That's really about as much as I could add, Martin. Over to you.
Yeah, sensible words, mate. No problems at all on that. And it is a shame, but in some ways I hope we don't lose it. Now, Frank, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I vividly remember the first hotspot that I personally saw was one that Bill Barnes brought with him to Dayton when the team convened there in Dayton. I remember he had it in a hand. He had probably a little power pack, rubber bands around it, and he had his HT with him. I'd read about it and knew kind of how it worked, but it's the first one that I had seen. When you pass it to Bill, he can confirm that. I think Martin Rothwell gave a tremendously useful predicate for my comment. Let me talk a bit about the life cycle of new projects, particularly if they're open source. They're usually propagated by people who have beliefs in certain principles. That is, open source is, in fact, the antithesis of commercial closed source, right? And so there are some beliefs that go along with that. And a lot of good things can come from those beliefs. But as you make technical progress, you tend to have organizational growth. So when you get organizational growth, you get committees involved, boards involved, groups of people, and they all have different ideas. And you begin to work with other groups, and they're the same. And so you have now a little bit like the Titanic being MMDVM and running into an iceberg. Not sure M17 is an iceberg that's going to sink MMDVM. I think MMDVM might be one of the ice cutters that go through the Northwest Passage every year to make way for other boats. And so there are issues there where there are differences in their visions. Visions change in the process of visioning. You know, when there's something happens, everybody wants to predict the future, and 95% of them are wrong. You know, that's not what future actually happened. And so Jonathan Naylor has said that there are two key issues he has that were the predicate for him dropping support for M17. One's technical and one's administrative. The most glaring part of that for me, Martin, was that there are rumors. I don't know that they were confirmed, but rumors that there would be a royalty charge for commercial interest to use the M17 protocol. And I can understand if you're an open source believer, then you recoil at that. That's not in the spirit as you might believe that should be. And when you've got most of the power, you know, your should be's tend to count, right? So I'm in agreement with Leslie and Chris and the other presenters thus far. It's a shame because people like us have done what Martin Rothwell said was needed, come up with the best one. We've not come up with the best one, but the ICQPodcast Digital Voice Talk Group tries to transverse those issues for most, but not all, of the digital protocols. We don't do analog. Lots of problems there. But on the digital side, our Digital Voice Talk Group was perhaps the first. I believe there's another podcast that created one, and it may have gone by the wayside. But I believe we've tried to do that, the equivalent of the Star Trek Universal Translator. So we're certainly big proponents of MMDVM, particularly because of what we're doing. And I really hope that they can work this out. M17 is a promising protocol. We may or may not need it, as Martin Rothwell says, but in the spirit of cleaning up all the commercial ones, because they don't want theirs to cross communicate. It's not in their corporate interest. So I understand M17 and I understand what the spirit is, but M17's got boards and they got people with different views of the world. Now, Martin, that's my take on that as a sociologist, and I believe this will work out. I believe this was the first shot across the bow by Jonathan Naylor. I'm going to drop you, and we'll see if M17 comes to the table to try to work out the difference.
Yeah, interesting, Frank. It is interesting. And, you know, you can often discussions need to be had and people need to work together. Sometimes you can't work with people. And there's one person at the moment I can't work with locally and refuse to work with. So, you know, I'm not taking sides either way. You know, it's down to the individual. Bill, have we left you anything to say on this one?
No, I think it's been covered really well. In fact, I just want to refocus on what Leslie's saying. These are both open source projects. The M17 group, I know, went through a big cycle of folks volunteering. I'm aware of that. The MMDVM folks probably have been more stable. I am aware that there was a open letter by the M17 folks last year about the M17 Foundation, which is, you know, basically he was getting the train back on the track, as using Leslie train analogies here. So I read both letters. You know, Jonathan brings up some good points, some stuff that I don't see with the little bit I know about this. Likewise, you know, we have another story here about the rebuttal. Same thing. The rebuttal answers my questions from reading the original, you know, complaint pretty thoroughly as well. But, you know, I just want to let the folks listening know these are open source projects. So, you know, if you want to keep and volunteer and keep M17 and MMDVM, fork the project. Make your own fork. Keep working on it. Same thing with the M17 folks. If you really need MMDVM to be a platform that you're supporting, fork the project. Take care of it yourself. Because that's the beauty of open source. The code's there for you to take care of, and the licenses are pretty permissive that they're using on these. So I think it's a fertile ground for volunteers to continue onward or not. It's really whatever the folks want to do. I agree with Martin completely. Diversity's good, but man, there's way too many diverse protocols in digital radio. It's too diverse. There should have been some winners shaken out by now. And there hasn't been, which is kind of surprising. So, and the other part of this too is just, I'm aware from reading various email lists, M17 is really promising. It's got a solid physical layer definition, data link layer definition, application layer definitions. It seems pretty reasonable to me, but I know from reading the listservs that there are other folks doing other things, trying to, fill gaps. And so there's going to be more digital protocols showing up at some point. I'm certain of it. And looking at my Pi-Star, which that's what Frank was talking about. I brought the Pi-Star along. Pi-Star has MMDVM host in it. And I'm using the Zoom Spot board, top of Pi. But, all that stuff, that MMDVM host is a pretty critical glue that holds a lot of these digital radio projects together. So I really hope they work something out in the long run.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bill. I agree with you totally. We've got to effectively, work things out. Talking is good, but equally I can see we probably have got too many digital modes. I mean, the three main ones, D-Star, DMR and Fusion, are amateur. NXTN and P25 are commercial. And there are, as Martin said, there are other commercial applications out there, but I think probably we've got enough. In M17 has taken too long to come to market, in my opinion, and I can be slapped for that one, I know. Anyway, that's where I think we are. Okay, 23 SEMS restrictions to be imposed in Europe. Well, that's probably going to affect you and me, Martin, when we have our 23 SEMS chats every now and again, because we might be interfering with everybody who's got a Galileo satellite tracking system in their car. What do you think? What do you think, Martin?
It's 9/10 of the law. We got here first. Go away. That's my answer to that. Yeah. So I have questions. Why do they need this? GPS exists. GPS works. Why do they need more? It's very accurate. I'll be honest with you. 23 SEMS is prime real estate. It's gigahertz. It's got good properties, all sorts of things like that. I have always had it in my mind that we would probably lose some or all of it at some point, but my money would have been on it going to like the mobile phone companies wanting the spectrum for 5, 6, 7G, whatever. I do wonder why Galileo or whoever want particular 23 SEMS. Why can they not go? What is it? 13 SEMS, 2.3 gigahertz. Why can they not track that? Or more to the point, I haven't looked at the band. What's either side of 23 SEMS? Why can 23 SEMS stops at 1.3 gigahertz? I think. What's at 1.31 gigahertz or something? It's the properties of the band would be almost ideal or almost identical, but what is there? I'll be honest with you. I think back to the 90s, and in the UK there was a allocation for CB radio at 934 megahertz, 934 megahertz. It was withdrawn and it was sold in the late 90s, I think, to Vodafone. Don't quote me. It was certainly sold to a mobile phone company. But to this day, some 26 plus years on, people are still using it. Not me, I got rid of my radio, but people do still use it when, Vodafone or whoever is, occupier of that spectrum at the moment, isn't using it. People do go in there. So I think even if they do put restrictions in there, I think people will still continue to use it. But I'll be honest with you, I've read the documentation. It's not very easy to follow. I don't really understand what parts of the spectrum are going. I think I forget what it was in relation to. Maybe it was to do with the Olympics, when Ofcom were like snatching frequencies from us to use for the Olympics. And they were trying to impose some common sense with it, like they want to take some of the 2 meter band, and they took it in the bit of the band that gets the least used, like the bottom end of 144. I wonder, with 23 SEMS, have they looked at where most of the amateur activity is? So, for example, the television, the television fast scan TV stuff, whereas the SSB and the FM calling channels are 1296 and 1297.5 or whatever. I wonder if they're going to say, okay, they're like the main activities here. You guys can have this, because 23 SEMS is we get a fair chunk of spectrum on 23 SEMS. So it's a nice big band. I can understand losing some of it, but I really hope that the bits that, if they are going to take it away, are where we don't use it and not right on the top of 1296, 1297, because that would just be a really, really stupid thing to do, in my opinion.
Yeah, the problem is, though, we're secondary users in all these bands, which...
Who's first? Who's primary?
We're primary, are we? Oh, sorry.
No, who is first for 23 SEMS?
Probably the military.
Yeah. I know military have a lot of it, but equally, if they do this, are the military happy to part with this band?
True. Too true. There you go. Right, I'm going to pass it to Frank next. So what do you think about this 23 SEMS? I know you're in the States, it doesn't really affect you, but what do you think?
Well, it doesn't affect us directly, because some of the confusion I may have generated, that military is prime here, and it's primarily for PAVPAWs, which originated during the Cold War, and it's a series of phased array antenna systems, radar-based, to look at submarine launch of nuclear missiles. But let's take it out of the States and put it in Europe. There are similar issues. And I believe Chris had mentioned that it was for a navigation system in the UK and or Europe. Don't know the military relationship there. I will pull a classical Martin Rothwell and have a different opinion. We hams forget, when we're secondary, we don't own the place. Now we have a stake. We have a stake in it. But when we're not primary, it's not up to us to complain too loudly, because it was not totally ours to begin with. Now, it doesn't mean we can't complain, we can't make arguments and that sort of thing. And with the rise of telecom and geographic parts of telecom, these types of band segments become very, very important on the commercial end. So I think it's the kind of thing that these committees have to be as objective as possible, all sides being heard, and somebody's going to make decisions. Some group's going to make a decision. So we'll just see how this works out. And we hams tend to pout and complain when we lose out on some of these things. But just remember, we're often not primary on some of these debates.
Yeah, I understand you, Frank, and I must admit I did some work for the Galileo satellite project probably about 30 years ago when I was in IT, and I always look at it now and go, guys, 30 years ago you knew you were going to get interference from amateurs, being in the same band as you, but hey, did they listen? Well, never mind. Chris, I'm going to pass it to you next. You've seen this, been kicking around for a while, and you've got some more information on it.
Well, I think the person to ask about this, the real expert on this, is a guy called Barry Lewis, G4SJH. So Barry certainly was, and I'm not sure if he still is, the IARU Region 1 Spectrum Regulation and Liaison Committee Chair. Quite a mouthful. So we spoke to Barry in Friedrichshafen about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And Barry did a presentation. So Barry did a lot of work on this, Galileo and 23 SEMS coexistence with amateur radio. And he did a presentation essentially it was all in preparation for WRC 23, so the World Radio convention. So in other words, the ITU, the big convention, happens every so many years, the World Radio Communication Conference, not convention, happens every so many years. And on the agenda was talking about Galileo and 23 SEMS and the amateur radio service. And Barry did a presentation. And from what I could see, after that happened, it seems to be pretty successful. Now, looking at what's being proposed now, I'm not sure what's changed. It seems to be the CEPT that are saying this in Europe. They're talking about a particular part of the band, so between 1258 and 1300 megahertz. They're going to restrict amateur satellite operation in that part of the band. However, that's obviously not all of the band. So it sounds like we've probably got other bits of the band we can still play in. But from what I remember, Barry's, it was kind of seen as a big success, what was proposed by him and the influence they had by the IRU at that conference. So not quite sure what's changed in the last, since then, I suppose, and then what's caused this to now come in. But it does seem like it's a CEPT thing, so it's just a European thing. But I think that's right. So, yeah, not sure what's caused it to be changed, but the good news is it's not all of the band, it's just a particular part of the band. Now, whether this is a slippery slope and it means, okay, well, then they grab that, which bit do they want next, that's another matter. But for now, it's only it's not the whole of the band that it won't affect. You'll still be able to, Martin, you'll still be able to have your chat as long as you pick the right frequency.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from. One thing that concerns me, and I don't know, but this is just a general concern, is if I'm transmitting even my hotspot on 433, Mrs. B can't get into the car because the receiver in the car is as wide as a barn door on 70 SEMS, and my 10 milliwatts beats her push-button device. But when we go up into 23 SEMS, and people buy Galileo satellite receivers to give them GPS and all the tracking and that sort of stuff. If Martin and I are having a chat and their receivers are as wide as a barn door, I think we might interfere with them, and even though we're trying to behave ourselves.
Which is obviously a separate thing to this story, but still relevant, I suppose. So just one other thing, Martin Rothwell said earlier, why do we need this Galileo, this other alternative to GPS? And I think it's down to, I suspect, things like road pricing, toll roads, that sort of thing. So GPS is good, but it's not as accurate. There are more, it could be more accurate. It's only accurate within so many meters. I think there are potential future needs to have perhaps a more accurate system. So things like being able to charge for driving on the road so many miles per day, that sort of thing. So I think that's probably the reason why they want to bring in this newer technology, this alternative to GPS for navigation purposes.
I'll be honest with you, when you say it's good, I don't think that charging people to drive on the road for toll roads is an appropriate use of GPS.
well, that's another debate, I suppose. But I suspect that's the reason anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure we can go off on all sorts of things on that. Bill, I know it's a UK story, but do you do any 23 SEM stuff?
I actually do not. The only comments I have is CEPT administrator shall designate the bands 1164 to 1215, 12558 to 1300 megahertz. That's the one we're talking about. 1559 to 1610 megahertz for use of the RNSS system Galileo. So they are now the primary user. And the other things is, in some of the band, most of the band, maximum value EIRP is minus 17 dBW. And narrow band applications, you can use a little bit more power if you're pointed up, 55 and up degrees, that is. If you, the only guidance I have is if you are in CEPT countries and you use 23 SIMs, read this Annex 1. It's pretty dense. It's a lot to unpack in here, and I don't think it's a good idea to sit here on the podcast and rip it apart, but there's a lot of detail in here, a lot of restrictions. So it's not that you're losing the band, but you're losing the access to use pretty much any power you want. You're really restricted on your EIRP, especially in the lower part of the band. So be careful, guys. Don't get in trouble.
Yeah, as I say, part of the document, when you check out the website, will give you, one of the links will give you the link to, I think it's about a 13-page document, tells you what you can and can't do. So that's another one. Leslie, this is probably the furthest away from HF I've taken you today.
Oh dear. Never mind. I know some of our club members are on 23 SEMs because they used to be on 934. Was it 934 megahertz? And obviously they got their amateur radio ticket and that they do use it. A couple of things sort of came to mind. Firstly, obviously you've got changing technology. You know, that's a force in itself. But I do think the overriding one is the monetary thing in terms of income to the government of the day. You know, if you look at radio spectrum, many years ago it used to be a backwater in the Home Office, and now it brings in millions of pounds of revenue to the country. So that the whole thing has changed dramatically. And unfortunately, I think, well, there may be losses to radio amateurs. They may have to restrict what they're doing, and it's up to it's up to national societies and the overall the organisation, the IARU and all that, to put pressure on to bear to protect the amateur radio's interests. That's my take on it.
Yeah, interesting points, guys, from all of you. And yeah, let's see where this one goes. And it does seem to be this year's roundtable is going to be a bit of a gloom and doom disaster episode, because our next news story, ham radio users clash with Starlink rival AST Space Mobile over their spectrum use. Now, this is, I believe, a state's problem, but AST wants to use 430 to 440 megahertz, which is pretty much our allocation in the UK. So if something's coming down from a satellite, it could interfere with us in the UK. Secondly, I know, once again, we're secondary users to this, but I just wonder. Bill, I'm going to let you go first on this one. What do you think?
I think this is foolish. I was going to ruin our clean rating there for a second, Martin. They're setting up this satellite constellations to do satellite to phone service. So when you don't have, especially here in the States, we get in the spots where there's no service. There's no LTE. There's no 5G. And their T-Mobile customers on newer phones can use Starlink for, I think, just texting and emergency calls right now. And AST is trying to build a competitive service so that they can provide this satellite to cell phone coverage. But the application they have for non-US capabilities, non-US, they want to use 400 to 410. Non-US, they want to use 430 to 440, space to Earth, Earth to space. This is for command and control of the satellite array. And I just don't, I can't get my head around this, that, you know, they're going to put up this section of satellites and they want their emergency command and control to be on a band where lots of traffic and people are using it. I don't understand what's going on here. But I mean, this is not the only thing this company is dealing with. I mean, they're fighting with the regulatory battle with two other large satellite companies because they want to reuse their frequencies they're already using. So there's a lot of stuff, you know, wrapped around this company, and I really can't decode which way this is going to go or not. The FCC has their application, and you know, it looks like people can respond to it and stuff. I don't know. This one's a real confusing one as I was reading the article last night, because it seems like this company would just be like better served by picking different command, especially command and control. Do you really want legions of computer security experts who are also ham radio operators in other countries lose access to one of their bands when they have radio gear already existing and antennas and nothing but time to see what probing they can do on your equipment. It just seems like it's foolish. So
Nuts.
I don't understand it.
Yeah, the other one I'm thinking while you were talking, Bill, is, they're going to have all this sort of stuff going on. This company AST, I don't know how big they are in the States, but then there's been some massive companies go to the wall in the past. We could go all through this, being put in and infrastructure and messing with the frequencies, and then them go out of business. So, don't know. Frank, what's your thoughts?
But Bill had a great set of comments on this. I think one little thing that I would add to what Bill was saying is it's interesting that the U.S. Federal Communications Commission has been petitioned for a U.S. company to use spectrum outside the U.S., which is ultimately, I think, an ITU matter. And it's interesting that a German ham named Mario Lorenz has petitioned the U.S. to deny this claim. So I think Bill's not understanding it's because it's very, very vague. I think this is what Lorenz said. And we have made such poor administrative judgments in our zeal to get ahead on some of this technology that we've talked on this podcast. We're ultimately going to get so many darn satellites up there, and they're going to start coming down, and hitting things they shouldn't hit. So just those kinds of things alone, particularly where you've got international players and who's on first in terms of regulatory issues. AST asking the FCC to use frequency spectrum and using it when they're outside the U.S. I'm with Bill. That's a head scratcher.
Yeah, kind of interesting. I don't see where this one's going, but apart from it's going to, well, certainly in the UK, the 430, 440 part of 77s, we are, once again, secondary users, but that affects the UK's military. Leslie, you were in the military. What do you think?
Long time ago. Honestly, I think the whole idea is nuts. Absolutely nuts. I'm trying to find the polite way. I think Frank's made some very, very good points. And even if you do get a license to put these things up in the air, there's no guarantee that you're going to get clean spectrum when it's flying over other countries. And things like the military, things like amateur radio, I just don't think this has been thought through at all. That's my take. Over to you, Martin.
Yeah, fair comments. Now, Martin, you and I do a fair amount of UHF. What's your thoughts?
Well, my first question is, what do they do for things like downlink, like the channels that, or the frequencies that are effectively talking to your phone or your device or whatever? How does that work? In my thoughts on however many satellites are up there, however many companies are providing this service. We talked about Starlink, we talked about AST, I don't know how many others there are. There's only so much spectrum for things to talk down to the ground on. It's not infinite, contrary to the belief of some people that just want wireless everything. And so there is obviously a limit. Why do they specifically want 430 to 440? Why are they not asking for 460 to 470? Numbers just out the air there. Is it because they know it's an amateur service and are we easy enough to bully out the way? I don't know. It's just a suggestion. Is it the fact that they think, okay, they probably don't use it that much? What does it mean for us? UHF, we know it's prime spectrum in pretty much anywhere in the world, purely and simply because it works so well, especially in built-up areas and things like that. In the UK, again, MOD, I'm pretty sure, is the prime user of 430 to 440. You try and get a frequency for a UHF repeater in the UK, it has to go through additional clearance. I would hazard a guess that the MOD are not going to be too happy about satellites potentially flying overhead, operating on spectrum that they are the primary user of. And again, I'm 90% sure that the MOD is the prime user of this. And I know that, I'll be honest with you, I've used 77s since I've been licensed. I don't think I've ever heard anybody that isn't an amateur operating on 77s. But as a secondary user of the band, respect that they may want to use it. So it may be there. They may just like to have it there for the times when they urgently need it. But I also think about things that are operating worldwide on 433 megahertz, for example, key fobs that open your car, 433.92. You tune to it, you're going to hear chink, 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 little noises all the time. Satellite going overhead, is that going to stop people's cars opening? Remember, key fobs technically, I think, are a tertiary user of the band, but Ofcom came out to investigate, setting a massive precedent for their team. Don't even get me started on that. But does that mean that people aren't going to be able to get into their cars, or Ofcom or whoever going to come out and investigate? And equally, if they do find the problem to be a satellite, how do you stop that? The thing's in space, you can't necessarily stop it. We're licensed by the FCC, yeah, but you're flying over the UK now. I don't. Other things, cranes, 433. They cause us so much grief. You can hear them. Poorly programmed radios on building sites. If you tune on 77s, you do hear people occasionally talking to not just cranes, but on building sites, because they've bought some radios and they've either just gone some generic frequencies or someone's just put a load of frequencies into them. And 433.5, the UK 77s calling channel, I have heard building sites chatting to each other on there. When it comes to satellites, though, I do think, why not build one big, very good satellite network with redundancy and share it, almost like an MVNO, like a virtual operator for satellites, same as the mobile networks. They can share their space. Mobile networks all claim to be number one in the same market. Well, why don't you just build one network, put your own technology into, or put your own lines into it, just like the electric do. One network, and then people put their own power into it. Do the same with satellites. Build one satellite network with redundancy and share it. You've already got the spectrum to talk to each other. What do they need this extra space for? My other question, and it probably goes back to the 23 SEMS question as well, have people like the RSGB, the ARRL, have any of those people had a say about this? Have they been consulted?
ARRL just filed something.
So the ARRL have just filed something. If this could potentially affect the UK, have the RSGB done anything? Don't know.
We can't answer that one, Martin, because we don't know. But
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think it will come down to the fact that we are secondary users. Although,
but you still have a right to say something about it, don't you? You can still say, like, this is a bad idea and here's why.
Yeah. And as ICQ, we tend to use 77s when we're out and about anyway. So we're quite serious users of 77s band. But there you go. Chris, have we left you anything to say on this one?
Not a massive amount, other than I agree with what everybody else says. This is a bonkers idea that, of all the bands, this is probably one of the busier ones when it comes to traffic, amateur operators. I didn't realise there was I've obviously heard of Starlink. I didn't realise there was another satellite-based internet provider following, using kind of similar technology. So this is a new one on me. But no, I think it's been said. I think using, they can go and find some other frequencies somewhere to use rather than trying to use amateur frequencies.
Yeah. Chris, there's Bill may be saying the same thing I am. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I was going to say there's at least 5 that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Amazon and Google also had projects, but
Google.
So I think this comes back to possibly Martin Rothwell's comment earlier. So why don't they all collaborate and build one? Because I know this is not really an amateur radio thing, but having lots of little tiny satellites up in space is causing all kinds of havoc for people that are trying to view stars and that sort of thing. It's in fact, I saw an article the other day, not related to this really. They were talking about they were going to paint them all with some very, very dark black colour to minimise the impact of doing that. But feels like it's one of those things where collaboration might be a good idea.
Well, when the U.S. government opened the skies to commercial satellites, that's when that changed.
This is what happens. Yeah. Okay.
So, grim news for our band again, but let's hope it doesn't affect us too much. Last news story, and it's kind of a carry-on from a story we did a fortnight ago, where a prominent Parks on the Air gentleman unfortunately got electrocuted when his mast landed on a power line. And I found this, and I still think, there for the grace of God go I. I've been in electronics 50 plus years. I've had 8,000 volts through my thumb. That hurt like hell, and other bits and pieces. And I've had too many shocks, and I've survived. Fortunately, touching wood. But it says here there's about 150 people every year die in the States through electrocution. Now, maybe that's work. That's work related. That doesn't cover domestic and other people, like amateurs getting electrocuted, like we said last episode. So my theory is it time that somebody did some education to the masses on the dangers of electricity? Frank, do you want to go first on this one?
Sure. Years and years ago, Bill may remember this. There used to be an icon of a stick man made out of electrical lightning bolts, and it had a head on it. And he was pointing to a young child and said, it simply said, electricity killed. And so there used to be that sort of mass education thing. Martin, let me begin with this. As climate change has occurred and we've had these dramatic storms and our power grid goes out due to trees coming down and other things, you have more and more professional line workers. They've had training that get into the business of getting more and more people back online quickly. And even if you're professionally trained, if you're pressured for a time deadline, you can forget things. And now I'm not professionally trained for electrical work, but about 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years ago, I had purchased the first MFJ big stick antenna. Martin Jew was the first one to import the 17-foot stainless steel whip. And boy, look at the copycats out there, and there are some that are better and all this good stuff today. But I had this, and I was out in a small town of Morton, Mississippi, east of Jackson on Interstate 20. And I was working with a Scott County club to help them get formed. And they got the mayor out to a park, and they were showing broadband HamNet. They had remote satellites on a race and all this stuff. And I was out there representing ARRL, and I was putting up this big stick, and I was talking to the mayor. And I let my guard down. And that stick, when I pulled it out 17 feet and went to put it up, it touched a power line. Now, why is it I'm here talking to you today? It's because it was a service power line and no one had turned the breaker to turn the power on. And yet I made a stupid mistake that could have killed me very easily. And thank God I hadn't turned that on. So I am all aboard for this article because we all need these reminders to look up and live, et cetera, and let's be careful.
Yeah, I agree with you, Frank. It's a worrying time if people aren't. I mean, yeah, I've done some silly things, but but for the grace of God, I go I. And I've heard of people licking 9-volt batteries and dying. Now, it may be that they've had maybe they've got a pacemaker or whatever, but as a kid, you licked a 9-volt battery to see if it would start charging it. Not a good idea, I would suggest. Leslie, what's your thoughts?
Oh, you're getting me on one of my soapboxes here, Martin. What can I say? I did do the risk assessment for the club due to various circumstances, and I know what the reaction's going to be, but we're just trying to do things right, trying to do things proper, and to stop, and I know human accidents do happen, but we're trying to stop these things like For example, putting generators next to tents, a minimum distance, making sure the equipment is all safe and working properly before we take it on field day. And I've got lists of what needs to be done and what needs to be maintained. So we try and minimise it as possible. I know people are radio amateurs, but just try and do things properly. I have gone to funerals, two funerals many years ago, through two chaps died of carbon monoxide poisoning. So it's a little bit near to home to me. All I can say is just try and do things properly. That's about it, Martin.
Yeah. Well, there's a saying in the UK, there are old electricians and there are bold electricians. There aren't many old, bold electricians around. I was fortunate enough to meet a G3 many years ago, and I'm not giving you the rest of his call sign, who was an old, bold electrician. And he had half his fingers missing through various things, being electrocuted or chopped off or one thing or another. Yeah, he survived, but he's one very, very exceptional circumstances, and we need to be safe. We need to. I don't want you to kill yourself. I want to be able to talk to you in a few years' time. So that's where I'm going on that one. Martin, what's your thoughts?
Well, I look at this, and it's a good safety tip, and I always say, look, I'm all for natural selection, but this is basic common sense. In fact, this exact thing was covered during my foundation course. I did my foundation course, 2009, I think, 8, 9. It was covered at that point as a basic common sense thing. But I always say, pay attention to your risk assessment, but it's not, the risk assessment doesn't necessarily cover anything. Every risk assessment that I write, I always put a caveat on the bottom that says, take 5, stand back, look at the potential safety risks, discuss them with your friends, your colleagues, the people around you. If there's something that is unsafe, what can you do to make that right? If you see someone doing something that's unsafe, stop them. If someone comes up to you and say, hey, I think you're doing something that's unsafe, stop, listen to their concerns. They could be saving your life. So, yeah, it may be a common sense thing, but just do it. It's literally, this is the difference between life and death. Nothing. Getting your points in the contest are not worth a life.
Yeah. Now, one other quick thing, which I think is important to mention at this point in time, it's not in this, it's just something I've spotted over the last 4 or 5 weeks, but the electricity will come into it at some point in time when some muppet does this on things like YouTube. There are a lot of AI videos about at the moment. People are producing AI videos of all sorts of things, and you think, that's clever, and then you use your brain and go, that can't actually happen. That is defying the laws of physics. And one of the things, I was talking to Phil VK6ADF the other day, and I was saying, all these people seeing animals, looking after animals and bits and pieces and other species and that. I mean, I saw a YouTube video of a crocodile carrying a fish from one pond to another and letting it go. Rubbish. That was obviously AI. But so what I'm worried about is somebody's going to show some videos some point in time where somebody gets electrocuted and, I don't know, all their hair stands on end or whatever. And people are going to think that's funny and then try and replicate it and kill themselves. That's what worries me, I'll be honest with you, going forward. So, well, Chris, am I waffling about nothing again? Sorry.
No, I think this is important. I noticed on the last episode with the other team, sadly the guy that died and the POTA activation, but I think it's important to remind us all of this stuff. In fact, I've actually just gone back and checked our club risk assessment for operating a field-based radio station, and I've actually updated it to include something around this. In fact, the RSGB have actually got some quite good advice around operating near to, or not operating, shall we say, near to overhead power lines. So I've essentially incorporated their advice into the risk assessment. So no, I think it's important that we all, like Martin Rothwell was saying, kind of stop and think what we're doing. Just sometimes we just sort of rush into something or don't necessarily think enough about something sometimes. So I think having a checklist or a risk assessment or something to follow Doesn't preclude common sense, but just to remind us all that we should just have a look up before we do anything. Before we start putting ladders up, putting aerials up, putting masts up, just have a little look up. Okay, yeah. Oh, look, there's a line there. Let's not do that here. Let's do it somewhere else. So I think it's worth reminding everyone of that now and again.
Yeah. And so what I was saying, used to say years ago, seeing's believing, but with so much AI in films and movies, seeing isn't believing anymore. Bill, have we left anything else to say on this?
Yeah, I agree with everyone else. This is a nice little article ARRL put up, but really just, look up and live is the little phrase that they repeat through the article, but it is just pay attention, be very careful, and be very careful. The character Frank was talking about was Ready Kilowatt was the character's name. Yeah, I'm trying to get the dog to stop barking.
I think Bill's trying to mute his dog at the moment.
You see, this is recorded live. We don't make it up.
Who let the dogs out?
Sorry. Do you know, we joke about this while Bill's doing that. This did genuinely happen. I was on broadcast radio, and there were about 5 other people on different radio stations in the same room as me at the time. Someone had their dog there, and it started barking, and that dog was heard on multiple stations across the UK. So it does happen live.
Okay. Bill, you back with us?
I cannot get this dog to stop barking.
So I just run with it. The dog's got a lot to say.
Yes.
What do you think, dog?
Talking as much as Leslie. No, I have nothing else to add other than, just be careful out there, guys.
Okay. I agree fully on this. Be safe. Use your brain. Understand what you've been taught in this hobby. Please be safe. If you're not able to say you're safe, don't do it. You have to work within your limits of knowledge and your understanding. And if you aren't happy, you don't work on it. That's the best piece of advice I can give you, or you stay away from high voltage. Yeah, I've worked on up to 25,000 volt stuff when I was a lot younger.
Me too.
Yeah, you too. But the whole thing is, there are people coming up today who've never worked on anything over 12 volts. Be sensible, be careful. And equally, and I tell this story and I'll tell it again, the number of radios we used to get back when I worked in the commercial thing, walkie-talkies and handy-talkies coming back with the antennas all chewed. And the guy says, well, it's only 7 volts. That ain't going to do anything to me. No, it might only be 7 volt battery, but the RF on that rubber duck, when you've broken the rubber, is probably about 50 volts. And you've got that in your mouth, you'll know about it. So lots of sensible things. Just be careful, guys. And I know I'm labouring it, but I really want to keep as many of our listeners as possible and talk to as many amateurs as possible as the years go on. So don't kill yourself, please. Okay, that concludes our news stories and me having a bit of a witter at the end. Right, let's find out what the guys have been up to. Bill, you haven't said you're on a hard stop, but I'm pretty sure you possibly are. So I'm going to let you go first.
Yep, hard stops right now. So very quickly, still working through. Been very busy between vacationing and work this summer, but I've been working through trying to get 100 DX countries on CW this year. I'm up to 75, so I am progressing well. And I also took part and worked all but one station in the 13 colony special event that happened right around the beginning of the month. And I'm still working with that, trying to get some certificates and stuff sent out for that. But been very, very busy, and I still have a couple more vacations. We're catching up this year on places we haven't visited in a while. So it's been very busy summer. Back to you.
Yeah, certainly sounds it, Bill. But at least you enjoyed yourself, and you said you went to Niagara Falls, the Canadian side. Actually, Bill, I was there 26 years ago. I don't go to Canada that often, but I was there 26 years ago. It's a lovely part of the world. Right, Frank, what have you been up to since the last time we spoke?
Well, I heard that the Three Stooges went to Niagara Falls once and did a famous skit for Niagara Falls. I too have been there, Bill. My wife and I were there a number of years ago, and you won't forget it if you've been there. Well, I've gotten some things off my desk and out, Martin. The AM broadcast radio study that I had mentioned on the podcast before came out today, actually, in the Spectrum Monitor. Is the death of U.S. AM broadcast radio exaggerated? What we know, and one key thing we don't. In a month, I'll be able to post that article on my K4FMH or Fox Mike Hotel blog. So was glad to get that out. As a result of it, Paul McLean, who's the editor for Radio World magazine, has invited me to write an op-ed piece about my findings in the study and point back to the Spectrum Monitor article. So I will get that done by the first of next week and off to Paul. He had read a draft of the study, as did a couple of people here on the podcast, Bill Barnes, Dan Romanchek, and Martin Butler. So I appreciate that. Also gave a talk to the Sutton and Cheam Club here a few days ago on some antenna HF portable antennas I've been experimenting with. It's always a great group for me to talk with, very congenial group, and I enjoyed it very much. And I've just gotten one of those antennas called the Eiffel antenna in a manuscript and just completed copy editing that today. And as I usually do, I'll let that sit on my desk for a few days before I go back through it. And I'll try to get those other 4 or 5 put together over the next few weeks. I've got some more test data that I have to do. Still doing work on my bench. I published a blog article at k4fmh.com about choosing inductor coils. And looks like I made a mistake on making the Q estimates for one of the coils. And I had someone comment on it, and I spent a little bit of this morning. And as we take measurements for inductance, they're a little more complicated than they are for capacitance or resistance. And the test jig that I had put together for these different size coils, there was one goof up, not on the inductance measurement, the microhenries, but on the Q factor. So I've gone back and recomputed those, and I'll respond to the kind Ham who had done some work on it himself and called my hand on it. And I greatly appreciate that because we want to make sure numbers are as good as they can be. Continuing to work on some portable radios. I like building boxes for them and that sort of thing. So that kind of thing, Martin, still tweaking a bit on battery boxes and helping out some hams in that score. I was net control once again for the Soul Cycle Sizzler race and work with Jim Armstrong here, president of the Jackson Amateur Radio Club, doing a little service activity. So nothing major, but keeping myself busy and most of the time out of trouble, Martin.
Yeah, well, I did see the picture of you as a net controller on the internet, and yeah, your blog, very good, I must admit, and the talk you did for Sutton and Cheam, absolutely A1. And like yourself, you and I give back to the hobby. Occasionally we might miss something where somebody comes back and tells us. That's great that somebody else is giving us information. It's not a one-way street. So like yourself, if I get something wrong, I don't get upset if somebody comes back and explains to me why I got it wrong. So spot on, Frank. And I know you and I are pretty much the same on that. Leslie, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
Oh, well, what can I say? First of all, I bought myself a portable power supply unit. One of these Echo Flow jobs, that it's a 300 watt inverter. But the thing is, I got it because A, it's small, portable, and I could use it to operate my radio gear without breaking my back. So that was one of the toys I've been playing with. The other one is I've been doing some rummaging through all my stuff, and there's various projects on the bench at the moment. There's a 77s antenna that I've been working on. There's an IC2E that was in the cupboard. I thought, no, I've got to get that working again. And there's also, oh God, this is a blast from the past, a Dayton D70. And as we've been speaking, I've been spraying all the switches because it's covered in crud. And I thought, well, that'd be really good if I can get that working again. A couple of projects that we had a little 25 watt amplifier that I thought, no, I'll pass that on to somebody else. So because I think that's not a goer, but hey, if somebody else can get it working, that's fine. Rummaging and sorting stuff out, I think that's the order of the day. And one other thing, we had a lady, a member of our club, and she moved away to Italy, called Anna, and she sent me a WhatsApp message, and we got talking about balance, and I said to her, Anna, I did this years ago. I'm having to scratch my brains and find out information. So thanks, Anna. You did me a favour. It was a real brain stretcher, but it was enjoyable. So that's what I've been up to, Martin.
Yeah, sounds good to me, mate. Sounds good to me. And at least you've been busy, which is a good one.
Yes.
Martin, what have you been up to since the last time we spoke?
Surprisingly, more than I normally have. I've had a couple of antennas on my roof that have gone high SWR, sort of in the space of a couple of weeks of each other. And I finally got on the roof yesterday, in fact, to go and have a look. And I've got a couple of unavoidable outdoor connections that effectively the coax I've had to join it. And they were put up there years and years and years ago. They were covered in self-amalgamating tape, more PVC tape, more self-amalgamating tape. And I cut one of them off the other day. I literally cut through the tape, went back to the plug, couldn't get one of the plugs off the coupler. The other end, it had all corroded. So I snipped the wire. The coax, the shield of the coax was literally black. So it's obviously had water ingress in there. But this, of course, has been sat on the roof on a black roof. It's black tape on a black roof that is exposed to all the heat of the summer, all the rain, all the cold of the winter over however many years. The tape has gone and it's perished. So that would be why the SWR has gone sky high, at least on that antenna. Of course, it was sitting in a puddle on the roof, which isn't good. It's not designed to do that. So that was one issue. But I've got to reroute those cables anyway, so it's not the end of the world. But I've got another one with identical looking type of plug, so I would imagine that a similar thing has happened there. So I will get that sorted at some point. I've been back on HF. I've been playing with some antennas. I do need to get the coax routed properly into the shack here, but had some really decent QSOs actually, and sort of rediscovered my love of the radio, especially on 17 meters. Had a chat the other day. I mean, 17 meters was absolutely dead. It was dead as a doornail, and I was just tuning through, and I could just hear someone put his call sign out. It's just on his own. And it's like, hang on, that's not a local call sign. It was a guy in Germany. And I went back to him and I couldn't believe it. It was like having a conversation with a local. I think it was more a case of that there was just no one using the band because it was during the day. But we had a lovely chat, and then sort of he disappeared, and then somebody else called me from up in Yorkshire. And I think he's normally based in Norfolk, but he was up in Yorkshire, and he said, "Look, yeah, I can hear you literally. You sound like you're just down the road." So again, we just had a lovely chat on 17, which was nice. As you've been recording, in fact, most of the afternoon, I've had Whisper running, and just on 5 watts, which is the lowest power setting that my radio will do. And I have had hits literally from across the world, 17 meters, 20 meters, and 40 meters. I've had hits from across the world, around to Australia, across to Eastern America, up to the north, the North Pole. There's a ship up there. There's a vessel ship. And also Tristan da Cunha. So quite a lot of stuff going on there. I did install, out of pure interest the other day, I did install FT8. I wanted to know what the fuss was about. Played with that. I've now uninstalled FT8. It is not for me. But okay, yep, done that. Tick. And last thing I've been trying to do is I've been trying to copy my logbook. I was originally I used Ham Radio Deluxe for my logging, and then they wanted money for it. And I disagree with that because I don't think that's in the spirit of amateur radio. So I moved to Log4OM, which is a tool because I like to put the HF contacts in there because I can sort of see whereabouts in the world I've worked. And I've got this. I found this tool that was actually recommended to me by someone in our work amateur radio club. Someone in Seattle recommended it to me, But the guy's website, his website's there, but it's just every time you try and download the file, it just says there's too much traffic going to this. Now, I don't know whether that's the site's down or whether there generally is too much traffic, but I couldn't download it. And it's a tool that would literally convert Ham Radio Deluxe into Log4OM. That hasn't worked. I reached out to him. He's actually down the road from me, not too far away in Leatherhead, but he hasn't gone back to me yet. I did find another tool, but it's not very intuitive and doesn't seem to work. But I've spent a long time trying to get my logbook and however many thousands of contacts that I've had over the years since I've been licensed to copy across, but it's just not working. So hopefully I'll get to the bottom of that. But yeah, databases and things like that are not my forte. Other than that, I've had a few contacts on 4 meters, been on the talk group a bit. Yeah, I think that's radio-wise. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, sounds like you have been busy, and it sounds like fun. Chris, I not sure 100% what you've been up to. I know where you were.
Not sure how I follow Martin with his little list of things there. Yeah, obviously, Friedrichshafen was a few weeks ago now. I think it's the first time I've been on the podcast since we got back, and I'm sure there'll be more interviews in the feature this episode shortly. So yeah, lots and lots of fun in Friedrichshafen, lots of sports, loads of folks, caught up with lots of folks, haven't seen for a while. So always great fun to go and attend that event, and lots of interviews, etc. So I know some have already gone out and some will be going out with this episode. So always good. What else has been going on? Yeah, Frank did another endorsement for Frank's talk. Did a great talk for us a few weeks ago on portable aerials, and a certain Bill Barnes, I think I may have dropped off the call now. Bill is doing our next talk. So Bill, when you hear this, it's a tough act to follow. I do know some of the guys. So we've got the one event that we do where we actually operate a radio as a radio club is SSB Field Day, which happens every year in September. I know some of the guys are looking at, perhaps, Frank, some of your aerial suggestions we can perhaps use for that. So I think there's a bit of work to be happening between now and then to try a few things out, to try and get the best aerial we can for that event. So that's inspired a few folks to get involved there. We, as a radio club, also use a scout hall every week. We have a meeting in a scout hall, and the aerial broke. The last committee meeting, so I mentioned all the aerials come down. It's a dipole for various bands that it works on, and one of the ends had fallen down. So we came along the other week and we fixed that. So one of the guys, I brought my ladder up and we got on the roof and sorted that out. So that's good. That's back on the air. Leslie mentioned portable power stations. Yes, I have one too. I've got one called a Jackery. I know there's lots of different brands out there. I think you mentioned EcoFlow, another popular brand of those. So yeah, bought mine mainly for use in my camper van, so I can get mains power. I think mine will actually do a kilowatt, actually, the inverter in mine, so it's pretty good. You can win an air fryer and that sort of thing, but obviously it's fairly large, so not that portable really. But okay if you're not having to carry it around too far. And so I've also got a solar panel as well, which is quite good, so you can charge it, if you're off grid, so to speak. So very useful for the camper van. I used it for our recent trip, and we'll be using that as well, I imagine, on SSB Field Day. Bit of a cleaner way of getting power than a generator. Other stuff. Oh, my next door neighbour's vacuum cleaner broke. I've been trying to fix that. Unfortunately, I think it's beyond fixing. It's one of these popular brands that make a cordless vacuum cleaner, but we changed the battery on it, which meant the vacuum bit works, but and this is not really radio, but it's more, I guess, electronics. The brushes at the end of the brush that rotates at the end of the the kind of bit that is the carpet was no longer working, and did a bit of work on that. Stripped it down last night, took it all apart, and did a bit of probing with my multimeter. Unfortunately, there was no voltage coming out of the PCB that fed those brushes, so I think it's and unfortunately it's a PCB which is all surface mount components, so I think that one is unfortunately beyond repair, which is a bit of a shame. But a bit of fun taking it all apart and watching a bit of YouTube on people how to do it, etc. But unfortunately not as simple a fix as I was hoping it might have been. So there you go, Martin. Back to you.
Yeah, sounds like you've been having fun. It sounds very bit fun. Well, I'll be honest with you, not much radio from me. I was in Lidl's the other day and picked up another soldering iron that I don't need, but this is a 48 watt temperature controlled iron, and I think it was about £10. So thought that might be useful because it because it was with a stand as well. And a couple of the irons I use quite regularly that have separate stands. So I thought I'll find a reason why I need another soldering iron. So I got another one. Talk group has been fairly active, but I think what's happening is there's quite a few people on the digital talk group. They're not always on at the same time. This is not a big secret, and it gets reset at about 4 a.m. in the morning UK time. But there is a website you can go and look at to see who has connected to our talk group within the last day. Because, as I say, it gets reset every day at 4 o'clock in the morning UK time. And if you put in dashboard.icqpodcast.com, you can see who has actually been on and what time they've been on and what mode they're using. Not a secret. You can't do anything apart from look, but it's there if you want to. Great antenna talk, Frank. Loved it to bits. Thoroughly enjoyed that one. That was certainly good. Had a few computer problems here. One of them's just gone in the bin because I got so fed up with it. It crashed Windows. I put Linux on it, and the machine was that old, and it had some very specific hardware that I ended up getting so fed up with it, I chucked it away. So that was that one. I've spent some time in the back garden, or the backyard as the Americans call it, with my scanner, just scanning around listening, and my Sony 7600, which is a world band radio, which has got SSB on it, which is been quite interesting. Wasn't able to fix Mrs. B's power block. I just couldn't get it apart. When we was in Germany, she had one of these power bricks, and it went bang, and I couldn't get it apart to see what had gone wrong. I was only out of interest. Have spent a fair amount of time just going through test equipment and making sure the batteries haven't leaked or the batteries are still okay. Did come across one of my multimeters that had a PP3 battery, which should be 9 volts. When I switched it on, the meter was dead, and I thought, there's no battery in there. And I thought, no, take it off apart and have a look. Sure enough, there was a battery inside it. The battery was down to 2 volts. Hadn't leaked, but it was down to 2 volts, a 9-volt battery. And last, a few other things. This weekend, the minute the podcast goes out, I will be down at Junction 10 on the M20. There's the Windmill Rally this weekend at Junction 10 on the Windmill at Ashford, Junction 10, the M20. And 8th of August is International Cat Day. 26th of August is International Dog Day. And that is 2 special events being run by 3 of our amateur radio presenters, Edmund Spicer, Karen, Eve Murray and Ed Durant. Are involved with those, and more information I'll put up on Facebook, and I'll also talk about it next episode. So not a lot from me, but I think we've all been busy. Right, all that's left for me to do now, guys, is to thank you for turning up, and I think we've had some interesting news stories today. I'd like to thank Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. I'd like to thank Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL.
Thank you, it's been fun.
Yeah, it has. I'd like to thank Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH.
Thank you, Martin. It's always a great time with this group.
Yeah, always is, isn't it? And Mr. Leslie Butterfield, G0CIB.
Thanks for having me on, Martin.
That's great. And Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B, had to drop out after what he'd been up to because he had things to do, which is understandable. Right, I'll say 73 to you all, and we'll move to the next part of the podcast. 73, guys.
Yeah.
73s, 1 to each of you.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
Now it's time to have a look at the news in brief with me, Colin M6BOY. We start off with news in Canada, where residents of the Yukon territory now have their own separate section. It contains the abbreviation Yankee Uniform Kilo, and it sets it apart from Nunavut and the Northern Territories. Those regions will continue to be part of the section known as Territories, which carries the abbreviation Tango Echo Romeo. This was announced in July in the Amateur Radios of Canada journal, the Canadian Amateur, and I say it will have potential consequences for Field Day, Sweepstakes CW, Sweepstakes SSB, and 160 metre contests. So certainly worthwhile checking, as I say, those events if you're taking part in those there, and what that may do to affect those there. So, but the first thing first is, I suppose, congratulations for the friends in Yukon Territory for getting their own section. The RSGB have announced the release of a high contrast logbook to improve the usability for those with accessibility issues. It's a new high contrast logbook designed to support amateurs with visual impairments or learning difficulties. It's responding to various bits of feedback from members and also advocates of the accessibility community. They've developed this logbook to make it easier, say, for everybody to use and log their calls in, etc. So we'll put a link to this on the ICQPodcast webpage for you to get a hold of a copy of this if it's of interest to you. And as always, it's available not only direct from the RSGB and all their usual places, but also via Amazon as well. So I say no reason not to get one if you need one. We continue on with news that both the ARRL and the RSGB have submitted proposals into the FCC. This is in relation to protecting the 70 SEMS band in the amateur radio frequency from a company called AST and Science, who are looking for unprecedented authorization to the band of 430 to 440 megahertz for the constellation of the 250 satellites to communicate with 5 ground stations using up 5 channels with up to 250 kilohertz of bandwidth. So say both national organisations have submitted feedback for the FCC to be consulted over, and as I say, we'll put links that for you on the ICQ Podcast webpage so you can see the work that our national organisations are doing to protect our amateur radio band. Right, well, now we're going to head over to our features episode, and our feature is the second part in our roundup of the Ham Radio Friedrichshafen 2025 event. Lots of really interesting interviews there, so I really hope you enjoy.
And now for this episode's feature from the ICQ Podcast.
This episode features the conclusion of our trip to Ham Radio 2025. Whilst the theme of the show was remote radio, there was so much more to see. We start with the RSGB, who have a new president from the island of Guernsey, and Martin M1MRB talks to them as they passionately show how they're promoting the hobby to a wider audience while protecting members' interests.
Well, hi guys. Today I'm with my old friends again here at the RSGB. Now, the gentleman next to me I'm going to introduce you to last because he's new to his new role. But we will come to you in a minute, Bob. Here on this side of me, I've got Mr. Steve Thomas, our General Manager. How you doing, Steve?
I'm fine, Martin. Great to see you here again in Friedrichshafen.
That wasn't what you said earlier.
Different for the cameras, right?
All right, yeah. All right. But no, good to see you guys, and it's great you go stand, and people seem to be doing quite a lot of business there, so that's good news.
It's been busy, it always is. It's a great event to come to. We absolutely love it, and people expect to see us here, and we're happy to do that. It's a great event. Yeah, great. Now I'm going to bypass you just a second, Bob. No, there's no, because I'm not being disrespectful. No. Stuart, we've known each other quite a few years.
We've known each other a long time. Didn't I teach some of your family to get their exams?
You certainly did. And I believe it or not, I brought these students down to you, and you said you can't sit in the back of the room. You have to help me.
Always engaged the volunteers.
No, it was no problems. I was enjoying the hobby, and I was great to be there and help in any which way I can. But I often joke and say I know you from taking students to the course.
So anyway, it's great to meet you here again. Always good to talk to you at all the shows, Martin.
Yeah. So what are you up to at the moment?
Well, I'm chairing the board, so I'm working with all my colleagues on the board to work as a team to deliver what the RSGB needs to deliver to support its members, both traditional things and we're doing an awful lot of outreach work. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay, I'll have a chat with you.
Technical stuff as well. You might see the odd article from me as well.
Yeah. We'll have a chat with you a little bit later on the outreach stuff off air, because I've got one or two things I want to suggest. So, Steve, I don't want you to feel upset, but I'm going to go and talk to Bob.
Oh, you should.
Okay, the gentleman next to me, and I'm going to make sure I get him to pronounce his surname because my mental retention is fairly low. But Bob, you're the new president of the RSGB. Tell us what you're all about.
I am. It's very good to talk to you, Martin, and a very good evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you're listening to or watching this in the world. My name is Bob Beebe. I have been elected as president of the Radio Society of Great Britain, a fabulous society, a world-renowned club, and it's an honour and a privilege to be able to give back, really, after being a member for over 50 years, but in the hobby nearly all my life.
Yeah. Well, 50 years is a long time. I mean, it's twice my length of time in the hobby. But, as I say, giving back and supporting amateurs and helping amateurs is a great way of working, isn't it?
It is. And, you know, it's funny. We were in Dayton just a few weeks ago, and you look back 100 years to 1925. They didn't even have contacts from New Zealand to the UK. The trans-equatorial contacts were just starting, and that was only half my life away, you know, so it isn't a long time. And I think we're all passionate about this hobby, aren't we? We love amateur radio, we love communicating, and we love international friendship. And I think to be leading the society with a fabulous team of hundreds of volunteers, thousands of members, and people who are just generally interested, I think it's absolutely great. So I am honoured, it's a privilege, and to work with the board and Steve's team and all the volunteers is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, well, I would joke and say that I'd be helping out with the RSGB, but Steve won't let me, but that's not true. That's definitely not true.
But I'm sure you're a member, aren't you, Martin?
I am a member.
That's good. And it's important to become a member. I'm not just saying this for the RSGB's sake, but to protect the spectrum. That's the access to the radio waves. Without a spectrum, none of us will be here. We wouldn't have a hobby.
Yeah. So, I joked and said, but invariably, we do similar work to yourself. We're independent, but we all try to support the hobby and grow it. Which is the important thing to do.
Absolutely right. And, it's all right talking about the history of the 100 years ago, but now it's time also to think about the future, because we want the society, the hobby, to be here in another 100 years' time.
Oh, yeah.
And one of my first presidential duties was to celebrate the 100 years of IARU in Paris recently, and I met some wonderful people there, and it was interesting because some of the meetings I was there at, there were a lot of different types of people, which I think we should be modernising our society. And I mean, women, people from different ethnic backgrounds. And so diversity and inclusion is something that I'm quite passionate about for the society going forward. And that's the way of the world. And we are international. We've spoken to people from all different countries, haven't we, this weekend? And so that's something we're looking at as a board as well, let's get some diversity and inclusion in the society.
Yeah, now you wouldn't necessarily know this, but for years on the podcast, I was looking for a lady presenter to present the female point of view.
Yeah.
No, nothing sexist, but the female. Yeah. And every lady I asked up until the one we now have,
right,
the husband stood behind and dictated what she had to say, which is totally wrong. Now, we'd love youngsters to be part of the ICQPodcast. Unfortunately, when we record, it's not always convenient for outside of the UK. But the diversity, what you're saying, youngsters,
young people,
and bits and pieces.
And I can give you an example of that. When I was first became a shortwave listener, and I'm sure many people watching remember when they had their first radio and turned on and listened in, or whatever it was, broadcast or amateur radio enthusiasts. I was 8-9 years old. By 9.5 years old, I was a member of the Derby Radio Society, which is a club in the UK it's gone now. And I was on the committee when I was 11 years old as a young junior member. And they were saying to me, oh, you bring a different perspective to the things we're talking about. And in my professional career, I've been on boards of companies and businesses where women have been there, people with different backgrounds, and they bring a different perspective. And it helps to modernize the company or the society that you're working with. So I'm very, very keen about that.
Yeah, well, a couple of the sentences I often use, and I'm sure the boys have heard this before, there are two things. A, the more you know about a subject or a product, the more you realise just how little you know. And from sales days, when I was an engineer and I used to do a lot of work with the technical sales guy, he said to me very early on, he said, Martin, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you talk, because people will tell you all sorts of things. And those two things kind of, even though we're quite senior people, if we had somebody who was 17, 18, they could still teach us things we don't know.
Absolutely. Do you remember the sticker that goes on the back of your car? Yeah. Employ a teenager while they still know it all. Yeah. And actually, that is true. They do know more than we do. You talk to a teenager about AI and the future of amateur radio with AI, it just opens up a whole different catalogue of things that we're not so familiar with. So it's very important to have a wide range of diversity and inclusion in all the things you do.
Yeah. Now stay with me, because I don't want to leave the boys out.
No.
I was going to say, diversity and inclusion, though, is of course including people, but it also includes technology and techniques. Yeah. And we really have to reach out to people who do other forms of wireless and include other forms of wireless. And if you go to the Innovation Centre that's just round there, you'll see people doing mesh. We need to do mesh. We need to do Wi-Fi. We need to do anything that's wireless related to get the full spectrum of wireless applications. And then AI, we need to include AI because it's such a powerful technology that we need to be applying in both our operational side and our amateur radio side.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Now, you guys won't be aware because it don't get released till tomorrow, but one of our news stories we talked about this episode that goes out tomorrow was about your training and the stats and how well amateur radio in the UK is alive and doing well. So we've talked about that. We kind of went off down the subject of no practicals. I understand why we don't do practicals, because of during COVID you couldn't, but I think people would benefit from it. Having tried to run a practical course where people come in, they don't show up, but I think people have got to get involved with clubs so that they get the practical experience, so that we can show them how it works.
The point is that practical shouldn't be a gatekeeper to getting a license. Practical should be something that you do as is appropriate, right? I mean, there are some people for whom practical is just going to be writing lines of software for a GNU radio application, and teaching them how to connect and wire up an antenna may or may not be what they want to learn to do.
True, but you're going to start somewhere, and let's be honest about it, I'm sure even Bob here was the same. We were all mic shy. When we first got our license. And probably now the practicals.
We still are, Martin. You can tell we're all mic shy.
We're all mic shy, yeah.
But what I was going to add to this was we absolutely knew that the reason the practicals came out with discussions with Ofcom was because of COVID, right? Yeah. But we absolutely knew that was going to change the training system, because it opened it up to people being able to take remote invigilation and do all of those things, which would have been horrendous if we hadn't done that for COVID, because all of those thousands of people that came in wouldn't have been able to do it. But we absolutely knew what you just said, which is why we made some videos that are still extremely popular on YouTube for the people, to show them what used to be part of the practical parts of the test. And I was part of making that video. We did it at the National Radio Centre. So still there, very popular. We still get lots of good feedback on it. But we went further and we did a series of videos on doing very simple practical tasks as well. So there was one on making connecting your radio up to your computer if you wanted to do data modes. There was one on creating a balun and things like that. But it started with those what can we do for the people who are not doing the practical element in the exam anymore? Still there, still on our YouTube channel, YouTube/the RSGB, that's where you find them.
Yeah.
But absolutely what Stuart said, this gives a real opportunity for the clubs, almost a unique selling point for the clubs, that says, okay, the people that have just taken the exams, come along and do your first contact, come along and do some of these practical things. And these folks are probably bored of me saying doing practical things is a huge thing that we should focus on. Because if people, you and I have talked about this before, if people do practical things, they're going to become more sticky, right, in a marketing term, either to stay with, or both, to stay with amateur radio, but we also hope they would join the society and stay as members of the society as well. So those things are really important to us. But people staying in amateur radio, sometimes they join, they try something simple, they get bored, they go away again. And we all know there's a huge amount they can do. But you've got to start with that practical bit that clubs can help people do. And we're looking at ways that we can do that as well. If you look at what we've done at the convention over the last few years, we've tried to include some practical activities. Mark Jones did a fantastic programming activity last year. And we're looking at ways that we can extend that and you do those things. And if you look around this event, you're seeing practical things. So we've been absolutely conscious of that and we want to do more of it. So I couldn't agree more with the practicals, but I don't think we can go backwards. As Stuart said, it's not the gatekeeping thing coming into amateur radio, but my word, it's something that people need to focus on, because the hands-on practical stuff in whatever part of amateur radio you like is hugely important.
Certainly is.
It's not all about speaking on a microphone as well. We need to be clear about that. You can have great fun in amateur radio just using a keyboard, just using a Morse key. You can do it by doing statistical analysis of propagation result. There are so many aspects, and we need to lose this it's a microphone position.
Now, in fairness, and you guys might just kick me off the stand now, I'm not a big operator. I enjoy the hobby. I enjoy the technical side. I enjoy bits and pieces. And I remember there was a couple of guys one year on an intermediate course, and we had to teach them how to solder. And there were so many bad solder videos on YouTube. And the guy said to me, "Oh God, that makes just so much sense when you spent 2 minutes showing me how to solder." Exactly. So it is, and I understand why the practicals, and I agree with Steve. It's now down to the clubs. Get your members in, get them involved, and then let them ask the questions, show them, and take it forward.
I would add another thing. Here we are today in Friedrichshafen in Germany, and if you're an amateur radio enthusiast or you love amateur radio, and you've got somebody who might be interested, then encourage them to come to an event like this. These events are fabulous because you see the whole it's a broad church amateur radio. You can see everything here. So if you get an opportunity to go to the UK, to the Ham Fest, if you're in the UK or in Europe, come to something like this, because these events are about face-to-face, seeing people and sharing their stories.
But clubs need to think more out of the box in terms of when they meet, right? So we know there's a big problem with the age profile of clubs and driving at night.
Oh, yes.
When the clubs meet, mostly at night. So one of the things we did at Crawley during the winter hours was we open on a Friday. We have a club meeting on a Friday where a lot of people can get there just after work and other people can get there by driving in daylight hours. We meet on Sundays. A lot of clubs do that as well because it doesn't involve driving and being out at night when you get blinded by the headlights.
Well, I have been to your Crawley Club a long time ago. I should come more often, and you have a really great location and a dedicated shack there, which is you're doing better than most. Nicely, but I do agree with you. We do need to bring things into a different perspective, and everything we're all in agreement on this. And I'm glad we are.
So one of the things we've done down there is we were part of the group that rebooted Thinking Day on the air this year, and we do JOTA down there each year. But one of the things that the kids really like, the youngsters really like doing, is we've got these little micro beacons, and we got as you know, Martin, Crawley is in Tilgate Forest. So we got this forest area. We take these beacons and put them out in the forest, and they absolutely love going and finding them. You've got to do activities that they like doing, and that's not just talking on the microphone to someone. On the other hand, for the guide event, Mayhem, we did recently, we put a QO100 station up, and we made sure that there was always someone at NRC so that we could guarantee to have a space-based contact whenever there was a youngster that took an interest in what we were doing.
Let me add some stuff about not just the NRC, but we were talking about what clubs can do when people are taking their exam. Let's go before that, though, because the relaxation in the license rules allows anybody to be supervised, right? Which is a wonderful thing at the NRC.
Oh, brilliant.
Anybody that walks through the door, we can put them on the air.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Right? Now that changes how you introduce people to amateur radio, because you're not just showing them, right? And I still don't think there's enough people taking up this opportunity.
It has to be taken up.
Right? It took us a lot of conversation with Ofcom to get this, organised. And people just so need to use this. So National Radio Centre, whenever we come to these events, and when we were in Dayton, everybody that comes to the stand says they've either been to the National Radio Centre, even in Dayton, or they were going to come to the National Radio Centre. It's true, isn't it, Bob? The way people view that. So we have 80,000 people a year through the doors, right? But we can put anybody that comes in on the radio using GB3RS, and they can operate whichever they want. We have digital, we have HF, we have VHF, UHF, satellites, Q1 at 100, the works, data modes, anything we want. We can demonstrate it, but we can actually put people on to use it. Now, that is available to clubs and individual radio amateurs as well, to allow people to use their station.
Yes.
And that is a fantastic way to let people get their fingers in it.
Yes.
And that's their first practical activity before they're even licensed.
Certainly is.
Huge opportunity.
Certainly is. And I'm sorry, Bob, I've kept you out of this a little bit.
That's okay.
But no, it's...
Shall I give you a sort of helicopter view of that? Because one thing we've not spoken about, which encompasses all of this today, is STEM. Now, for those people who don't know what STEM is, science, technology, engineering and mathematics. It's a programme through the whole of UK. It's going through schools. The RSGB were British Science Week official partner this year. We did a lot of work with young people, and it's also a way for them to not only learn about radio but communications for their future employment and their work, so they can enjoy ham radio in their spare time, but do that for a hobby. But STEM is great, and we're really pushing that on our outreach programs. And as Steve said, and Stuart, we want to make sure that part of the, this journey from 8 to 80, I call it, we want everybody to be enjoying their whole radio site. So.
Yeah, I actually been contacted by one of our local reps. There's a girls' school half a mile from me who want to set up a radio club.
Great.
Now, unfortunately, they're not very talkative at the moment, and I know it's exam time, but what I did is I've been back to the regional rep and said, yeah, I'm interested in talking to them. I will help in any way I can, providing it's going to be sensible. I kind of are trying to do this as when I do get to talk to them, I kind of want to do it as a business meeting, because they need to understand all that is involved in setting a club up for longevity. You can't do it for a group of children now and then they all leave at the end of the next year. You've got to do the whole thing. Teachers have got to be involved. They've got to understand about putting antennas up and all the other bits and pieces.
Yes, absolutely.
And training. I have to offer them training. So I want to make sure when I go and talk to these people, they understand what it is. I don't want to put them off.
No.
But if you're going to do it,
you want to do it right. So we've got lots of resources for that. From STEM champions to outreach teams, we can provide all of that help as well.
Okay. The only problem I have, and with STEM, and I think it's a great thing. I'm in my 70s, in the fairness. I tip up at a girls' school when they're like for 13, 14, 15, and the public look at me and say, what's this old man doing here? And I know what you're going to say. I spend a little bit of time with youngsters.
You could be an ambassador, Martin.
I could be an ambassador,
yeah, so.
but Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But the public don't always see that.
No.
And that's what worries me a little bit, in that as a hobby, we're getting slightly older every year, and unless the youngsters come up...
I don't think you should dwell on that too much, because we are getting older, but there's a lot of young people coming in.
As long as they're coming up and taking responsibility, I have no problem.
Do you know how many people took exams last year in the UK?
I did see the report, and you've now put me on the spot, because I can't remember the exact number.
I've seen the stats. Over 3,000 passed the radio exams last year. And a lot of those are younger to middle-aged people. They're not sort of in the mature audience category.
Yeah.
I'm not young either. So... you mustn't just say that it's a. There are a lot of young people involved. We've got board members now. The age of the board member, the average age has come right down. We've got Ben Lloyd on the board. He's driving all the youth outreach programs, and he's got even younger people working for him now as well. The STEM champions, which is fantastic. So it's a broad church.
Positivity in this area, right? We talk about this quite a lot. There is so much really good stuff that's going on. Sometimes it gets drowned out by the people saying nothing's happening. It's not true. So here, they run a youth camp. So I've spoken to the IARU organiser of it. They had over 100 youngsters register for that. So 100 youngsters have been staying in hall number 6 down there, and being active in all the things that are going on. So, and within the RSGB, then, as you said, Ben's leading the youth area, and he's been looking for people to lead schools, STEM, universities, scouts and guides. He's actually found people to do that. He's not just looking for them. He's got those people leading those areas, and we're sending people to the YOTA camp in Paris. I think it is this year, isn't it? So I've been talking to them about that this morning. So we're sending people, RSGB youngsters, over to that. We sponsor them to go to that. There's a huge amount of things that are going on here. I want to come back to the diversity thing as well, because we ran a series of women in engineering spotlights out on social media recently. That will be in Radcom as well. And we also spotlighted the variety of volunteers we have. And I want people to get away from thinking it's the same old people doing the same old stuff, right? Take a look at this stuff that we're putting out. And the other big passion of mine is people say they don't see enough amateur radio in the press. We've got some amazing numbers for what we managed to do with that last year. You're part of that, by the way. You're a small part. No.
Very small part.
No, not true.
But you're not quite at BBC level.
No, we're not.
It's not BBC. You've got your outlets. We've got Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram. Check the RSGB out. Look at our YouTube channels. You'll see the broad spectrum of things we're involved in.
Yeah. Now, when we have let's say the international media coming to us asking for our opinion, we know we're doing it right. Okay, but we still keep hearing, we never see it in the press or on TV and things like that. It's absolutely there, and if you look at some of the credits, you will see Radio Society of Great Britain have contributed something into those things. So there is a huge amount. But back to my original point, we need to be positive about it. Right? Because there is a huge amount of stuff that's going on.
If you go back to the AGM time in Radcom, look at the page that we always publish in there, which is basically a year in numbers, and those numbers are absolutely huge. We are doing a huge amount of stuff. The comms team are doing a fantastic job of getting amateur radio in front of people all over the country in all walks of life. Just look at the stats page and see the sort of the numbers we're achieving in terms of exams and in terms of reach.
It generates interest. Even next week, I've got interviews planned with BBC TV and ITV News as well. So people are interested in what we do.
That's good news.
Very last. No, it probably won't be the last thing. Let's be honest.
Go on,
the last thing I want to put in is Bob and I spoke about this in Dayton and here. It's actually a really positive feeling for us to come to these events, because a lot of the other national societies want to come and talk to us and find out how we do what we do. Right, so it's very easy when we're back in the UK for us to feel that everything's there's pressure, everybody talks it down. Actually, you come here and we are thankfully immensely respected internationally. Now, Bob knows more about this because of his IARU work, but there is that feeling when we come internationally. And I've spent I know these two have as well, but I've spent a lot of time with the other national societies, and they've been asking how we do what we do. We get things from them as well. Don't get me wrong.
True.
Right, but it is really what's the word for it? Uplifting, positive,
engaging.
You know what I mean, though, don't you?
Collaborative.
And you've seen it recently, joining as president, and suddenly you're in there, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though you've been in amateur radio for years.
Yeah, it's being a member of a big society is one thing.
Yeah.
What's your
something
involved in running a society is a big difference.
Yeah.
It's quite, the RSGB is a very well regarded society on the international stage for what we do, extremely professionally and extremely well.
But it's a bit like Formula One. If you stay complacent, you lose out.
Yeah.
So, and they, like those teams, look at each other, what they're doing. We do as well. You can't sit on your laurels. We have to modernise the society even further.
Do you want to talk about the apps, Steve? That's the work you're doing to present information.
Let's call it the digital platform. Let's go with that. Absolutely. So we know we've been publishing Radcom for years, over 100 years. TNR Bulletin started as, and we've been publishing it on paper. Right?
Yep.
And people have been saying, can you do it digitally? We wanted to do this really carefully, all right? Because there's a lot of people who are absolutely enthusiastic. They would get really annoyed if we took paper away, all right? So we're not doing that, but we've added the digital edition of Radcom Plus, Radcom Basics. They're all there, and we've done it in a platform that allows you to view these things on the web. So RSGB members can see all of those. And so far I've put in 25 years, so you can look at, I could show you now, I could scroll through 300 editions plus of Radcom, and all of the Radcom Plus and all the Radcom Basics. We've put some sample edition of Radcoms there, open access to everybody. So when we come here, we can actually say, oh, you can go to rsgb.org/Radcom, and you can have a look at a sample Radcom. If you like what you see, you can join and you'll have access to all the others. Yeah. So we've done that. The platform allows us to do that through the website, but we are now moving towards having an app in the two main app stores, Google Play Store and Apple App Store. So we're about to go there, and that means people will then be able to read offline as well. Yeah. So the web one, you're assumed that you're going to be connected to the internet. Yeah. The mobile one, then you will be able to read offline through those apps, and that gives us the best of both worlds. Yeah. It means that we're then able to offer a bit of a discount for people who only want the digital one. Yeah. Because the thing that makes the big difference, actually, it's not the cost of the paper, because if we print less editions, the per edition cost goes up. So you can take that out of the equation. It's the postage. Yeah. And in the UK, we get a really good deal on the postage. Yeah. But internationally, it's very expensive, and it takes a long time to arrive. So when we come to these events, really come into here in Dayton, polarised our thinking that was important. Yeah. So we've now got one rate for digital access worldwide, right? Because there's no postage involved.
Sounds good.
But absolutely key is people have got the choice. Yeah. Right? We're not enforcing this or inflicting this on people depending on how you feel about it. We're making it available.
You can see it's quite passionate, aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, the digital version will be a lot more exciting as time goes on. Yeah. For example, you'll be able to click through links. You can do that today, can't you?
We can click through.
If you click links, that makes a lot of
links become real. So when you see something new that we've referred to outside, you can go straight to it. Yeah. But there's lots of other exciting things I'm looking forward to seeing in that.
So in fairness, guys, because I'm keeping you a long time, there's a lot going on at the RSGB. I'm very much sure you're going to be at Newark, and so will we.
Of course. Yes.
I'm sorry you're going to have to put up with me again.
No, that's fine. But, I'm happy to talk to you anytime.
Yeah, but the whole thing is, just my last sign, and this is nothing to do with the RSGB as such, so don't look worried. I think there are two things that a number of amateurs should consider, and I'm sure you possibly agree with me. There are family members that are not interested in amateur radio, a la Mrs. B, who will never get a licence. She could probably pass it tomorrow without even thinking, because she's been around us so long. But she's not interested, so we don't force her. And I think I've seen so many people force the wives to do it when they don't really want to. And number two, if you hear an M7 on the air, I will work a foundation license holder before I work you, Bob. I'm terribly sorry. I know you're the president, but a foundation license holder needs that practice.
It's interesting you say that, Martin, because just in April, when I became president, I didn't realise this, but the president of the RSGB has access to a special call sign.
Oh, yeah.
It's GB4RS. The first day I got presidency, I went on 40 metres and I worked a whole lot of M7s.
Which is great news.
And that's important, yeah. And 2E0 is M7, everybody.
Everybody, but there used to be, it's getting better, but there used to be a terrible snobbery about foundation.
I think those days are largely gone now. And it's interesting, better. We get a lot of young people now who are interested, and listen to this, in learning Morse code, continuous wave or CW, and we're going to champion that as well, and a lot of young people want to learn CW. I just happen to be president of a Morse club as well, the First Class Operators Club, and it all dovetails in, because Morse is great as well. Young people want it. The hobby's great.
I should have been wearing my badge, Bob, which was my American call sign, because then you wouldn't know I was originally a Class B operator and never did Morse.
Does it matter? Does it matter if you did or you didn't? M7, 2E0, just get on the air and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, that's the important thing.
I think so.
Amateur radio has to be fun.
And my wife doesn't like radio.
Yeah.
But when we met 40 years ago, the first thing I showed her was my Radio Shack.
You didn't put her off then.
So she knew what she was buying into. Yeah. And we've travelled all over the world meeting friends that I used to talk to as a child, and it's just a great hobby.
Yeah. And I haven't been to your part of the world for a good few years, but I really enjoyed when I was in Channel.
I'd just like to say a closing message, if you can, Mark, unless you're going on for another hour.
We could do.
I just want to say, amateur radio is a great hobby. RSGB.org if you're interested in the society. But just enjoy your hobby, enjoy talking to people. Hope to see you at face-to-face events like this all through Europe and the UK. And, please come up and talk to me and Stuart and Steve at any time.
Yeah, I reiterate that. These guys don't bite.
They do come and talk to us, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, that's good.
At these events, what have we done the most?
Talk.
It's talking.
Yeah. These guys don't bite. They're passionate about the hobby, the same as we are. Come and talk to us. Yep. I'd like to thank each of you. Stuart, thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you as always.
Thank you, Bob.
You're very welcome. Thank you to ICQ Amateur Radio. And thanks.
And last but not least, my friend here, Steve.
Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Steve.
Good to see you all. Glad to see the orange shirt. We can see you at a distance. We know when you're coming.
Yeah, you can hide from us,
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, 73, guys.
Ed Durant, DD5 Lima Papa, caught up with hamlog.online, the project that, along with being a ham radio logging software, they also provide the ability to tie into contests and special event stations like the International Dog and International Cat Day, supported by a number of the ICQ podcast team.
Okay, we're still here at Friedrichshafen, and we're visiting the Hamlog and WARCA stand. And I'm here with Eugene, W3UA, so he can tell us a little bit about the product. But a little bit before that, just to say that this is one of the new products that is perhaps changing the way that amateur radio is going to go in the future. And I'll leave it at that for now, but let's see what all the different things that Eugene can tell us about this product and how it's doing, because it's constantly being developed and new pieces added. So, Eugene, over to you. What is Hamlog Online?
Hamlog Online is the platform for active amateur radio operators which want to keep all their activity-related data in one secure, safe place, and at the same time interact with all the other operators, have more efficient participation in the special activities, chase awards, manage their QSL card exchange, including the paper QSLs and the digital QSLs. And it also provides the very unique facility, which means HQSL, which means that the QSL cards in electronic form are digitally signed and thus can be served as a proof of the contact, unlike different pictures which can be altered. So overall, it's the platform for people who operate in the air.
Yeah, and to expand on that, because I have a little of experience in this, because I'm a member of the team working on International Dog Day and also International Cat Day, and that's a special award scheme, or it's a special event station with an award scheme, and that's one of the things that so far I think is something that Ham Log Online actually does very well. It provides, as Eugene was saying, an integration platform for all the things you need in there, including team control, including scoring, including a page so that people calling can see if they're already in the log or not, everything you want. But Ham Log Online isn't just for special event stations, is it? It's also for contests, or is that less of the case?
It's mostly for managing the information about the contacts you made through your Ham Radio Live. So when you operate a contest, then you can upload your contest log to this platform after the contest to be compliant with the contest rules, which do not allow you to disclose the data about your contacts before the end of submission. Or for some contests which do not have this strict rules, you can feed the contacts right in the real time, so they will appear in this platform in about 1 or 2 minutes after you completed the QSL. But at the main purpose is to manage information about your activity in all respects.
Okay, and you mentioned upload there. I mean, I know there's actually an online login panel built into the website itself, so that is obviously immediate. But I know some of our listeners are waiting to hear whether there's integration to existing logging programs that a lot of people already have on their PCs at home, and for real-time updates to be transferred from those to Ham Log Online to be in the centralised, secure system. What's been happening in that area? Have we something new to say?
Integration is the most important word for many activities these days, because nobody can do things equally well. So, of course, there are other programs and other systems who do better than, say, we do. And that's why we pay serious attention to integration with other loggers and maybe other platforms which do something which we can do. For example, we have a certain level of integration with Logbook of the World, so we can push the data to the Logbook of the World, and we can pull the confirmations from the Logbook of the World, so you know what is confirmed in the Logbook of the World. And we're also working with some other loggers to make sure that this integration works fine. The only challenge which we have is that some platforms do not provide sufficient security, so we cannot trust them. So we definitely can trust Logbook of the World, because the QSOs which are uploaded to the Logbook of the World are confirmed by their ARRL PKI system, so we trust them. But we do not trust some other platforms, so we do not interact with them.
Okay, on the other side, though, what I was trying to prompt you into saying, the most common, I believe, standalone logging program people have on their computers is N1MM+. And while forever you've been able to take an NADI file from that and upload it into Ham Log Online, I believe it can also happen real time now. Is that correct?
Yes. Thanks to the efforts of the team which develops real-time contesting, they finally convinced N1MM team to provide the more or less open protocol, which allows the other programs catch the QSO in almost real time with a small delay for about 2-3 minutes, and then this data can be immediately uploaded to Hemlock.
Over the network, so
over the network. So if you have the N1MM running on your desktop, then there is another piece of software provided by Hemlock, which works as a proxy between the N1MM or other real-time contesting compliant logs, and then it pushes this data straight to the cloud.
Okay, and coming to that from a different side as well, I know that there's a straightforward, simple logging panel in Ham Log Online, but it also can do things like your standalone loggers that you can actually connect from the Ham Log Online website or web application through a USB cable and through software to pick up things like frequency and band and so on from the radio, as local logging programs can as well.
Yes, exactly. The same module which runs on the local PC, which ensures the interaction with the logging programs, the same module connects the local transceiver. So the built-in logger knows the frequency and the mode of your transceiver. So if you use this local simple logging program, you complete, say, especially on CW or sideband, you complete the QSO, you press enter, and the QSO is immediately uploaded into the Hemlock. And also it interacts with the popular FT4, FT8, and other digital systems, primarily WSJT or MSHV. So you configure your WSJT or MSHV or other digital program. So as soon as your digital QSO is completed, it's automatically logged into Hemlock.
All about automation and integration. So we know that Hamlog Online is actually web-based, therefore browser-based, but the agent that we're talking about now that has these features, is that only for Windows or is it also available for Linux or Mac?
We try to keep 3 major platforms active all the time, so we have versions for Mac, Windows and Linux.
Fantastic, because that's the question that everybody always asks. Okay, the majority of people use Windows, but some people don't like to, and they have other choices, and that's great. So I'm sure we're going to look forward to more advancements in the future from Hamlog Online, and I wish you all the best. For people for information, where's the best place for them to go to find out more about Hamlog Online?
Of course, to go to hamlog.online, and if you have any questions, just open a ticket, send the support request, and we'll get back to you. At the same time, we try to produce as many tutorials and educational videos. We put them on our YouTube page, and I believe on Instagram. So there are many places where you can pull the information. Also, we try to teach ChatGPT about the system and about its capabilities. So if you have questions, ask ChatGPT and maybe it will answer your question quickly.
More about the future of amateur radio and artificial intelligence, looking at the documentation for us. Thank you, Eugene. I really appreciate you taking the time. The listeners might not know, or the listeners and watchers might not know this, but we've been trying to get this interview done at Friedrichshafen, and our schedules have crossed several times. It's taken a while, but we've got there eventually, and I think it was worthwhile. Okay, so thanks again and all the best.
Okay, thank you very much, and I hope this platform will be useful for many ham radio operators.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The ICQ Podcast. Come for a moment. Stay for an hour.
It's maybe sometimes easy to forget that traders and stand holders at an event like Ham Radio 2025 are also amateur radio operators too, who share our passion for the hobby. Martin M1MRB caught up with ICOM's Ray Novak, who shared their joint passion for the hobby.
Well, I've managed to get onto the ICOM stand here in Friedrichshafen, and I've met somebody who I didn't think was going to be here. Ray Novak from ICOM US. What are you doing over here, Ray?
I'm doing this right here. I'm the guy that brings some humor and has some fun, and really I'm having a blast here.
Yeah, it's a great show. It's a great show. And before we started, we spoke, and I said, well, at least we can prove that the ICQ podcast is more than one presenter, because you're not talking to our Frank this time.
No, and it's a joy to talk to different people, but it's very interesting the number of people that I already know over here. There's been a lot of Americans that I know, a lot of the same people that I saw in Xenia, 3 months ago?
Yeah. So I mean, I was going to say that when I've seen you in Dayton before, you're mega busy because it's your stand and bits and pieces. It must be a bit more relaxed here for you.
No.
No?
I've been in amateur radio for 35 years.
Right.
I've been with ICOM for 31. My first time at Friedrichshafen was in 1991.
Yeah.
And this would be for the camera. I will send it to you because a lot of people have received humor from looking at the photo.
You're right.
And we'll capture your reaction as soon as I find the photo here. There we go.
Well, there you go. Now, there are pictures of me with hair as well on the internet, but yeah.
Many people have said they don't recognize, and we'll even let your film crew look. We just got a oh wow and a laugh behind it.
Yeah. But
that's a fine suit.
That's a fine suit there, yeah.
Well, at that time I was working for MFJ.
Yeah, so I met Martin Jude, nice guy. I had a little chat with him when he realised that we weren't normal because we weren't trying to tap him up for a freebie or sponsorship. Great guy to have a chat to. And I know, first time I met you, you said, right, I want to sponsor you, how much? And we said, no, we don't do that. But
that was a surprise.
Yeah.
Just like you surprised him, that was a surprise to me because a lot of times we get people coming up, shove a microphone and a camera in our face, and then the next thing you know, well, what ICOM radio can I test for you?
Yeah. And in fairness, I do own ICOM radios. Not necessarily all of them. I have a 7300.
So, okay, I'm going to ask the crew. He says this to all the manufacturers, right?
No.
He's got a lot of radios.
No. I actually own a 7300, a 9700, because I wanted two that were very similar, because I want to operate. I don't want to remember all the different menu systems.
Yes.
And I actually have an ID92D, the little old-fashioned handheld of about 10 years ago. Works brilliantly. I also have other manufacturers' radios, and I won't better about that. But you have to choose the right radio for what you're doing.
Yes.
And you guys make some great radios, so some of the other manufacturers. When I worked, and this is different, when I worked for one of the dealers, people would come in and say, which radio should I buy? And I'd have yours, Yaesu, Kenwood's on display, and I'd say to them, fairly close spec, most, fairly close, and I'd say to somebody, which is the prettiest? Which is the eye candy? Because you could, at that point in time, Ten-Tech were making quite a good radio, but it was ugly as sin. I couldn't sit in front of it. It was horrible. So, you got to say to somebody, pick the one that you think's eye candy, because you want to operate it. And maybe I'm silly. You can tell me I am, but
no, that's the same approach that I take. When somebody comes to me, I'm looking for a radio. What should I buy? if they leave it like that, I ask them, what do you want to do with it?
Yeah.
I'm going to show you an Icon product, but there might be one of my competitors that better fits for you. Shame on me for not making that right radio.
Yeah.
So like you just said, you had a 7300 and a 9700. Did you know they had a baby?
I used to own, and I regret selling it. I used to have an Icon 703, and everybody thought I was a lunatic because I didn't have the ISO 8FT817.
Yes.
And I said, I'm an older gentleman with big hands, and I don't need my glasses. So the Icon radio for me was absolutely brilliant because I could do the controls and I could see the screen.
But have you looked at the 705?
I have looked at the 705. I don't own one at the moment. It's a lovely radio, but in fairness, I've got a lot of radios, and nicely, and I'm being nice about it.
Yes.
I just don't need another radio at this point in time. If one of my radios died tomorrow, it would certainly be in the frame.
Okay, but you're thinking about it the wrong way. You think I'm trying to sell you another radio.
No.
But the 705 is the perfect spectrum analyzer to go look for noise.
Yeah, but I own a spectrum analyzer, but never mind.
Do you own one that size, though? You can hold it in one hand.
No, I don't. Well, no. Yeah, there was the mini spectrum analyzer, but yeah, I hear where you're coming from. And it's a good radio. I've seen people using it. I know people who've got them. Great radio. I just don't own one at the moment.
But there again, that's an example of the kind of sales pitch that I would do.
Yeah.
Is somebody, well, I got too many radios. Do you have any RFI in your neighborhood? Do you hear power line noise? It could be a transformer. No one's going to carry a 7300 around, but 705 with its own battery pack and just a little Yagi to go look for the noise. A lot of people never think about it because the first words that they hear, oh, it's a QRP radio.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, it's a QRP transceiver, but it's also a great spectrum monitor to look for HF noise, VHF, or UHF noise.
Certainly is. Now, a lot of people go, oh, it's a QRP. I would prefer to go out and operate QRP, and if I work 3 stations in an afternoon QRP, as opposed to 30 plus on QRO. But I find that if you're QRP, if I work somebody QRP and I tell them I'm QRP before they give me the signal report, they always give you a rotten signal report. And it's interesting, they'll give you a good signal report if they're listening, but then you tell them you're QRP and they, oh no, well, you're not 5 and 9, you're about a 4 and 3 or something, you know.
The thing, and that's one of the funny things about hams. They look for that 5.9, 5.99 RST coming back. I just look at it, I made the log.
Yeah.
To me, no one goes, oh, you were in the log. What kind of signal report? No, I made the log on a DXpedition.
Yeah, and the other thing is it's about making the contact, as you say. And if I can hear you and understand you, what more is there needed?
But also in QRP versus QRO, I hear somebody goes, well, they couldn't hear me with 100 watts, but as soon as I turned on the amp, I worked them immediately. It takes finesse with QRP.
Yeah.
Listening to their pattern, getting it at the very end, or the very beginning or the very end of where they're listening. That, to me, that's the fun and the art of working a pileup.
Yeah. Now, not so much pileup and DX, but NVIS. The number of people I've worked recently on low power, and I'm sure I'm running NVIS in the UK, and they're in the UK, and they come back and they go, I'm running 500 watts, and you're thinking, I'm hearing you, S9, no problems at all. And they tell me, it could be good signals to them. It's so much of this is bad because people don't get their antennas right, or they don't understand the propagation they're using.
Oh yeah, the ones that I really love are the ones where you repeat your call sign 5, 6, 7 times, and then you get 590, man.
Yeah, you're 5'9", what's your call sign again? We've seen that many times.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Listen, Ray, you're busy. You're getting a group over the other side of this desk looking for you. Great to catch up with you. Hopefully we'll catch up with you again in Dayton. Otherwise, I'll send Frank round looking for you. And I'm sure when you got new product, come and tell us.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, this has been a fabulous time. And I'll be in the UK for WRTC 2026. So hopefully you guys will be covering that event. That is a very fun event that we've been a sponsor of since 2014. So we've really believed in a WRTC and love supporting that event.
Yeah, well, I've known Mark Haynes a while, not as long as you have, because I know Mark worked for Icon before he worked for Kenwood. We knew him at Kenwood. We met him in Dayton with you 2019. So, yeah, I've spoke to Mark about this. He's asked us to come along. We'll promote it as best we can for you as well. So that's a given deal.
Yeah, I met Mark after he did Kerguelen. So he was in his early 20s. He was youthful at that point.
Oh, don't upset him. Don't upset him.
So I call him Mr. Fantastic because every time I talk to him, everything's fantastic. I've never met somebody that had that outlook about life and ham radio. So,
yeah, and Georgina supports him, and she's actually got a license now, I believe.
Oh yes, and she keeps him in line.
Yeah. That's good news. Listen, Ray, thank you very much for your time, mate, and have a good show here.
All right, enjoyed it very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Now, interviews like these in today's episode and in the previous episode would not be possible without the support and time given by the interviewees, but also by the generosity of our presenters who travelled many miles by plane, sea and car at their own expense. The ICQ podcast policy is that no interview pays or takes advertising to be featured in the podcast. So if you've gained any value from this podcast or the feature or any previous episodes, please consider sending some value back to us. For example, a one-day ticket to Ham Radio 2025 costs €15, approximately £13 or $18. A coffee in Germany is €4, and an ice cream dessert from Mrs. B costs €10. The easiest way to send your support is by going to our special webpage, ICQPodcast.com/donate. We continue on with our interviews from the show. Graham Somerville from BHI Noise Cancellation has improved the radio experience of thousands of amateurs. So it was great to hear how the technology we use to improve the quality of a radio reception is being harnessed by the UK Health Service, the NHS. Hi everybody, I'm here with Graham Somerville from BHI here at Friedrichshafen, and good to catch up with Graham as always.
Yeah, good to catch up with you guys. It's always great to see the orange shirts, you know. You can't miss them anywhere, really, can you?
Yeah, well, I hope you haven't had too many beers last night, you know, and your eyes are sort of, fuzzy from it, because this isn't what you want to see, really, is it?
Yeah, not too many, because I had to get up for this today. So, I've done that too many times, and then you struggle the next day.
True. You were telling me a great story earlier on about how BHI and the ham radio community has really opened up a market for you with the National Health Service in the UK, and I'd love for you to tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, it's funny. We got a call quite a few years ago from an amateur, and he was working at the Cromwell Hospital in London, and he said, look, have you got a noise cancelling intercom? Because we've got an intercom on a cancer treatment machine, but it doesn't work because we can't hear the patient because the noise in the machine is too loud. And we said yes. We didn't, but we said yes. But I had a friend that made intercoms, so very quickly we got a prototype knocked up. And from sort of then onwards, we developed a system and went into partnership with an American company called Accuray. And we actually now have a partnership where we supply them intercoms and noise cancelling intercoms. So what you get is a desk unit that's push to talk. You have a speaker and a microphone with a 25-foot cable that hangs down below the patient. So the patient then, when they're having treatment or before, when the noise of the motors are running, open comms to the nurse's station so they can hear all the time with the noise cancelling what they're saying. And then if the patient gets stressed, they know because they can hear them and they can talk to the patient. So it's just a very simple system that we used with a Cat5 cable that's not used as a Cat5 cable, but a lot of the hospitals and places that would use this have cable runs like Cat5 everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just developed this, and it's just went on from strength to strength. It's probably half our turnover now is these intercom systems. So recently, my eldest daughter Ali joined BHI Limited as the marketing manager. So she's been doing a lot of stuff with case studies, and she sort of got hold of the intercoms. And we happen to have locally to us in Brighton a cancer treatment centre, a breast cancer one, and they've got 2 of my intercoms in there. So I've been sort of working with them, and she did the case study and some promotion and blogs, and we've had about 4 orders in the last few months from various NHS hospitals. So yeah, the noise cancelling's helping patients be heard, really.
And is there much difference between actually the technology that's inside those intercom systems and the stuff that's maybe for the amateur radio market? Was it just a straight lift of the technology, or did you have to tweak the settings along the way?
No, it's just the same technology on the receive path. So on the desk unit, it's just coming in from the other side, and it's the same that all the amateurs are benefiting from. We have it at a fixed level, quite a high noise cancelling level, so that because of the way the DSP works, it's looking for speech. So if they're not talking, the noise cancelling's working. If they're talking, then it removes the noise and they can be heard. So it's quite a good system because of how the DSP works. People often ask, how does your DSP work? Well, it works by looking for speech. So if you've got no noise at all, the speech is just going through unfiltered. But even if you have a high filter level, the speech is unaltered. And then if you suddenly get a lot of noise, it does its job. So it's quite good. You don't have to keep changing the filter level every time. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's a fantastic story of how the hobby's helping, say, mainstream and the NHS from there and work from there. You also mentioned as well there's a potential new product on the horizon. Can you tell us much about that?
Yeah, we had a speaker called the DSP-KR that sort of went obsolete because of components, but we're virtually just about there now, and we hope to bring that back. It's like a 10-watt speaker, and we've added a bypass feature. So we're just finishing off a few things, and we hope to get that in production in the next few months. So that's going, and then hopefully some other products to do with noise cancelling after. One of the markets my daughter wants to get us into is the marine market. So we've got like a marine waterproof speaker with waterproof switch. So we're going to try and push into that market. Also, the other commercial market was like the Coast Guard and the sort of National Coast Guard Institute. We're looking at trying to help improve comms from at sea to save, sort of improve if there's anyone in distress, it helps to improve the speech quality, and.
And then sort of, again, I suppose, the better the speech quality, the faster they can respond, because it's clearer, you clearly know what you're responding to, don't you, exactly from there. So it makes a lot of sense.
It does. What we did was we did a trial for 3 months, and what they found was a lot of the volunteers were hard of hearing, and having our noise cancelling actually lifted the speech because we could get rid of the noise, so they could actually hear what people were saying at sea. So they all benefited from having the noise cancelling, and so we're working on that. And
so fantastic. So, I mean, UK Hamfest is in, 3 months? Could they possibly be picking up those products there? Do you think that timeline might fit?
I hope to have a prototype of the DSP-KR Mark II by the Hamfest, and maybe even one of the marine speakers. So, yeah, we're pushing to try and get them for the Hamfest.
Perfect. So, say if you're going to UK Hamfest in Newark, early September, isn't it, this year? If I remember right, they're moving now.
Early September, yeah.
So check out Graham's stand there, and you can have a look at the prototypes and sort of see from there. Right. Well, I think that's great to catch up with Graham. I say it's always great to hear you've got new products coming on the market, and I say you've been looked after at this show as always. So it's great to see you again.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been looked after by your mum has been bringing me coffee. It's amazing. So, and she's been sitting and have a bit of a rest. I don't know where Martin's been, but he's around somewhere. Anyway.
Probably complaining he's not getting looked after and getting cups of coffee and all the rest of it. We can start rumours on this, Graham. But as I say, I'm quite impressed that she's looking after you, but the rest of us got to fight for ourselves. So fair play to you, my friend.
Yeah,
fair play to you.
Thank you very much.
Look after yourself. Cheers. Martin caught up with Emil Bergman, who many of you know from activating Rockall Island. He tells Martin how he's not been sitting still and his recent adventures.
We're over here in Friedrichshafen in a very, very noisy location, but this is a gentleman I met 2 years ago. Emil, great to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm very happy to be here. That was really nice. Yeah.
So you've been doing a lot in the last 2 years, a lot of events. Tell us about what you've been up to.
Yeah, now I was in Pietre del Moro. It was a small wild island, not so far from Valencia. And I'm so happy that I had done it. And that was so just small rock, 2 meters long and 50 centimeters over the sea level. And there is a small tower 5 meters up. So I take my tent, a small child tent, I will climb up, put it on the air, and so I run one day, full day, and so done 630 cursors. I'm so happy that everything was really nice.
I did see pictures on the internet of you in that tent, and I thought, he's a braver man than me.
Yeah, but it was a long way to find the right stuff to do it. Because you don't have opportunities to stay there on this island for a long time and do some cursors. And that was the first crazy way, but the just only way to stay for a long time on this island. And I was so happy to be in 1.50 meter small tent inside and to feel like at my home.
You certainly had a small location, but as long as our hobby's all about fun. And I know you enjoy what you're doing, so that's good.
Yeah, I'm happy because it's just a new way. It's just new thing. Like 2 years before, when we done a Rockall Island, but it was a new adventure, new kind. Everything was also new at that moment. But I used my experience before. I had my dry suit from Rockall Island, and all that stuff helped me to do it at the moment and to be successful again.
Well, that's great news. Now, what do you got planned in the future?
Oh, the future, in 3 weeks I will be again on Polar Cycle. I'm a mountain guide there, but I will take a radio with me and do some nice cursors from there. After that, so at the end of August, I go to climb big rocks in Dolomites and take also the radio with me, do some sotas. And at the end of the year, it's Equatorial Guinea. We'll do CW and AMA cursor. So that's the plans for this year. Perhaps Mike 6 Tango again for Secret Worldwide DX contest. That will be great.
Well, that sounds great to me. And I know you do a lot of mountain climbing. You must be a mountain goat in the SOTA operation with the heights you do.
Yeah, it's just fun. It's nice.
Yeah. Well, it's great to talk to you again.
Thank you very much.
All the best, and we'll catch you soon.
Thank you very much, my friend. We will see us on the air or in personal. Everything is a pleasure for me.
It's good to see you.
Thank
you. The ICQ Podcast. Getting it said for amateur radio.
And we close out our interviews from Ham Radio 2025 with Ed Durant, DD5 Lima Papa, discussing innovation with the IARU.
Okay, well, we're here still at Friedrichshafen, and this is Ed, DD5LP. I'm here with Mark, HB9SSB, from the IARU, and his role is actually related to open source and to content providers. And I'll pass it straight to Mark to tell us a little bit about what he does, and then we'll see where we go from there.
First, hello, Ed. Nice to meet you and your crew here at the Innovation Zone of the IARU Region 1 booth in Friedrichshafen. We set up this Innovation Zone. It's not the first time that we do it, to give innovative projects a place to present themselves. These are mostly projects in emerging technologies, new developments in new modulation modes for digital voice transmission, to give you an example, or brand new software-defined radio developments. We have, for example, SIG Radio here, a project you probably never heard of. Actually, that's a successor to the well-known Lua Radio project. The developer decided to rewrite it in a new programming language called SIG, hence the name SIG Radio. So we have projects here at the stand who have never before been publicized. We're proud of that. So these are all open source projects, and with that I come to my role. I'm the open source projects coordinator of Yaro Region 1. What does this mean? Let's look back a few years, at least 50 years, when Yaro and Yaro Region 1 was formed 75 years ago. It had a very hierarchical structure. We have Yaro worldwide on top. Then we have 3 regions, Region 1, Region 2, and Region 3. And within these regions, which are quite large, we have the member societies. In Region 1, we have more than 100 countries that are our members. So in each country, we have one member society. And these member societies, they are the contact to the regulators in their respective countries.
Yeah.
So they're really important.
Mm-hmm.
It is really important that we have and that we keep this structure, and be it only to have this line from the top down to the regulators.
But with innovation, surely that goes across all of those lines. And I think that's what you were talking to me about before, that a little bit of it is that you are trying to get amateur radio into open source areas in the same way as you bring in open source development into amateur radio through the innovation area. I am quite impressed with what you told me about your involvement personally and the IARU in the big open source conference in Belgium where amateur radio was actually represented. Can you give us some details on that?
I will give you some details, but let me just bring you... I want to bring to an end what I said before about the hierarchical structure.
Yeah.
Because what you just mentioned, these open source movements, it had also a lot to do with change we saw around beginning 40 years ago when the internet came into play. This changed how the world works. This changed society, and this also changed how technical hobbies are conducted. So no longer, the amateur does no longer need to be organized in this hierarchical way, but it was not created, but suddenly there was a separate layer of organization, a completely different organization form, namely in communities. So young people tend to organize themselves in communities rather than in societies.
And these can be communities that are worldwide.
These communities are actually worldwide because they now communicate over the internet. So it's the SDR people that are dispersed all over the world, and no longer they organize them because they're in the same town, but because they have the same interest. And I myself, an open source developer for many years, and I've been I am in many of these communities quite active. So I know very well how these communities organize themselves and how they work. Believe me, they work completely different than these hierarchical structures we know. And my role or my goal now is to understand how these communities work, how they interact, and how a hierarchically organized organization like Yaro Region 1 can interact with these communities to the benefit of both sides. The benefit of both sides means we can learn from the communities how they organize themselves to work on a worldwide scale. But on the other hand, we can try to convince community members to become actually also members in their respective country's society, because the more members these societies have, the more weight they have when it comes to talking to the regulators.
Yes, yeah. So you're trying to, in some ways, get the best of both worlds, of getting the worldwide hierarchical side, but also the hierarchical side for feeding up into regulators, but also the worldwide capabilities of open source, so that development happens quicker. And it seems to be a bit of a conflict to me, the hierarchy and then the the no hierarchy. And I mean, that's the area that you live and work in, I guess.
Yes, but I wouldn't say it's a conflict. I would say it's two different schemes that came out of a different background. When Yaro was founded, this was the natural way to do things. Yeah. But nowadays, the natural thing is to get organized over the internet in chat groups, in WhatsApp groups or whatnot. And so to profit from this, and there's a huge know-how in these open source communities, that means you have to understand them.
Yes. And there's got to be respect on both sides and communication. And that's where we then come back into the point I leapt in a little bit earlier about the big conference in Belgium you were involved with. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Every year at the first weekend in February, the free and open source software developer European meeting is held in Brussels at the Université Libre de Bruxelles. And this started out as a meeting of open source developers who wanted to meet and exchange ideas. So this runs now for about 25 years. And it attracts every year more developers. And I can just give you some names of who is there. And with who, I mean not the users, but the developers, those who make these products. There's Python, there's Perl programming language, there's the Lua scripting language, PostgreSQL database guys, MySQL, LibreOffice, Firefox, GNOME, KDE, Fedora Linux. So all the names in open source, they gather there, exchange ideas, and the organization form of this conference is quite interesting. There's a main track consisting of high-key speakers, but then there are these developer rooms. There's more than 100 developer rooms throughout the conference, and these projects, they can apply for a developer room, and they get half a day or a full day, and they have to organize like a conference within the conference.
Yeah. So we can really say that for Europe, it's the center of open source. The event is the biggest.
It's not only Europe. This is worldwide.
It's worldwide.
This is the conference to go when it comes to open source. And of course, many of these tech hackers are radio amateurs. And so amateur radio or related topics like software-defined radio have in the past been topics of these developer rooms. And I've been personally involved in organizing the radio dev room in the last 2 years, which was a huge success. 2 years ago, we did it together with GNU Radio people, and we called it Radio and Software-Defined Radio and Amateur Radio Dev Room. It was crowded the whole day. There was a long queue of people who wanted to get in.
So that's good to hear, because we hear so much about amateur radio meetings where the turnout is disappointing, and just one room within the major open source, 1 or 2 rooms, whatever, that they got such a good response suggests that, or confirms that, there's certain overlap between open source and amateur radio with the people involved in both sides.
Yes, I would say modern amateur radio would not exist without open source.
Yeah.
It's open source drives the innovative developments of society and also of amateur radio. I mean, no modern transceiver does not use software-defined radio. And
yeah, it's true. Very few, if any.
Open source has become one of the major driving factors of technology at large. And so this conferences and the exchange between these communities is so important and has become so important. And even this year's conference was even a bigger, or not a bigger success. It was it was packed with very interesting talks, and we are already, of course, trying to make sure that also in the future ham radio stays a topic, an important topic.
Brought me right into my next question, which I wanted to ask you to sort of round this up. In the coming year, okay, next February, I think, is this big conference, but is there anything else that in your role from the IARU you'll be involved with to events where amateur radio and open source come together? Are there smaller ones in different countries, for example, that come up?
Actually, there is. I have to say these conferences are not officially run or endorsed by Yaro Region 1.
No.
But Yaro Region 1 people are involved in organizing it. And I want to mention the Spectrum Conference, Spectrum 25, which will be held in mid-September in Rambouillet near Paris in an old radio factory.
Okay.
And this is, we call it, we gave it the tagline, Making Waves.
Oh, yeah, very nice.
We call it a conference for the creative use of the radio spectrum in open systems. And we run this conference in the same spirit as FOSDEM, but with a specific focus on radio spectrum use. And with radio spectrum use, we not only mean amateur radio, obviously, and one of the very interesting talk last year when we did this conference for the first time was how to design and build very low frequency receivers, and seeing a receiver who can receive the waves created by the solar wind touching the magnetic field of the Earth in frequency ranges of 1 hertz and making this audible. This was science at the best, and presented so that everyone could follow. And I was very impressed to have such talks at the conference, and not only the latest in SDR, the latest in satellite, though the latest in satellite was also there. But this is a conference that we were doing in September in Rambouillet. Check out the website, spectrum-conference.org. Then there is obviously the usual conferences in Europe that are organized by DARC, DIRC. And then of more conferences, I'm personally not aware, but this is more a defect of my brain, and not the conference is not happening.
Yeah. Okay, so if we have any of the listeners who would like to learn more about the whole idea of not just open source, that's a big subject, but should we say the IARU involvement in promoting amateur radio into open source areas, is that something that there's details on the IARU website, or do they need to send an email to you if they're interested, and if they're based perhaps more in Central Europe than the UK or the US?
Actually, we're trying. I have a sub-website on the Yaro Region 1 website, and where I try to publish information. You can, if you have questions or suggestions, you can always mail at opensource@yaro-r1.org. That's the email address that we set aside for all things open source related.
And to be clear, that's IARU. I love your Swiss pronunciation. But yes, IARU-r1.org. Is that correct? And then slash?
No, that's an email address.
Oh, that was the email address. Sorry.
Yeah, open source at.
Open source at. Great.
Actually, the URL, I'm very sorry, I don't even know it.
Yeah, but it'll be somewhere under the standard IARU Region 1 website. Yes. Mark, thank you very, very much for giving us the time here at Friedrichshafen. I know I've learnt a lot. I hope some of our, or most of our listeners will have learnt something new as well. And it's good to see the work that is going on to perhaps bring together a little more the people who are interested both in amateur radio and in open source, because I absolutely agree with you. Without open source software, amateur radio isn't going to progress anywhere. And as you say, also, find a current modern radio that's been produced that isn't using some kind of open source code in there or open source technology in there. It is part of our future, I feel.
Yes, and think of all these enthusiasts in open source that did not yet hear that there's amateur radio. So it's a two-way thing.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you, Ed. You're welcome.
Well, everybody, I really hope you enjoyed our roundup of Ham Radio 2025 from Friedrichshafen in Germany. Certainly was an enjoyable trip, and I'd like to thank my colleagues who joined us out there, Martin M1MRB, Chris, Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel, Ed DD5 Lima Papa, and Edmund Mike 0 Mike November Golf. And so it was great to spend time with you guys, and I really hope you got a great flavour of the show with our feature over the last couple of episodes. Now, the ICQ podcast could not do what it does advert-free without the kind support of our wonderful donors, our monthly subscription donors who help us, as they were base to pay away, along with Charles Carter, who saw value in the show and sent that value to us in our value-for-value model. They all went to ICQPodcast.com/donate, and they turned the value they get from the show into a monetary amount, and they sent it to us to help us pay our way. So we'd really hope you consider us as a lovely bumper show for you in this episode, and really hope that you found the value and would like to support us. So please visit ICQPodcast.com/donate. We'd also like to thank Chris, Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike 0 Sierra Golf Lima, Frank, Kilo 4 Foxtrot Mike Hotel, Bill, Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, and Leslie, Golf 0 Charlie India Bravo, for taking part in the news roundtable. Really do appreciate your views, and it's great to have you on board for that part of the show. Right, well, that just wraps up episode 461 of your ICQ Amateur Radio podcast. Really hope you enjoyed this wonderful bumper episode, and I've certainly the 2 episodes recently have been certainly nice long ones for you, and hopefully you got loads of value from the show. So as always, guys, we hope you continue to enjoy the hobby, and we'll catch up again in a fortnight's time. 73 till.